understandable. If you have questions as we go along, please let me know. So under administration, the grant revenue of $35,000, that is grant revenue we will need in order to perform the master plan process, to continue the master plan process. Hold, please. Are you gonna come in? Okay. She's having trouble today, so give her a minute. I will continue, and then we'll come back and answer, talk more about that. On the, certainly.
Okay, the 2022 budget, that's property taxes, they're probably appropriate compared to the 2021.
So those are determined from the assessment value that is sent to us by the county. This is the preliminary. We will get another one in December that will give us a final number. That number is completely dictated by our mill levy, which is 8.322%, and that is based, and then you take that times the assessed value, which this year at the preliminary showed it at 18 million.
Okay, but in the sales tax on the town, you have 10,651, where you had in the budget last year 991. Is that just reallocating money?
Yes. So we get 3% sales tax. 1% has to go to capital improvement. 182,000 has to go to the police department. The balance is allocated through the general fund as we need it.
Okay, so you just have switched money around there. Okay, that's my only question.
So, yes, we have triple checked the our annualization of the sales tax, and it does annualize out at what at more than what I have in the budget.
Okay, right.
And yes, I did have to also take some of the excess county tax from the police. It was going 100% to the police department. We needed some of that in administration because of the increased costs for legal services.
Okay.
And you will see in there that I have increased the legal expenses significantly.
Yeah, is that based on experience?
Go ahead.
Right, and so we based on our utilization of legal at an hourly instead of a fixed price contract.
All right.
Not gonna work. Okay, I don't have, huh? So I think throughout the entire budget from all funds, I have about 82.5 budgeted for attorney costs. Do you want to talk, since we're on admin, do you want to talk about the master plan?
Sure. So the master plan, typically, as you all know, a master plan is put together and driven by your planning commission. Our current planning commission doesn't have the expertise in that area. And while we attempted to do more of an in-house chapter by chapter, that doesn't seem to be a very timely process or effective because of experience. And so having spoken to our legal counsel and other communities, the standard typically is that you utilize a company who does this professionally. So I took all of the hard work that's been completed via having our intern here, whose primary function was to work on the master plan under our previous administrator's direction. We took all of the work that he had done, all of the data and studies that have been done by other nonprofits, groups, and entities through our community, and provided that to, I provided it to Western Slope Consulting, who is doing our master plan update, or writing the master plan for Parks, Recreation, and Trails, and asked them, with the data that we've already collected, what would you estimate a master plan update to be? And with the age of hours and that additional data, he said that they estimated that an update would be about $70,000. Typically, an update would be less than that, but you're typically supposed to be looking at updates in your master plan, every 5 to 10 years, not 20 plus. So he said it's almost like a rewrite, but we've got really good information. So it's a savings of about $50,000 with the work that's already been done.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tammy.
Is the SGM asset inventory capital improvement plan information with them as well? Because we haven't even discussed that document.
It was not provided at the time that I requested that update because we didn't have that final.
Any other questions on administration?
The capital outlay is 70,000. You said that was tied to what?
That is the master plan.
And the 35 in the income.
The income is a grant. We will have to secure a grant to have enough funding to do it.
Okay. I'm sorry I missed part of that. So
And
thank you.
we will have to secure that grant before we can move forward.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The transfers in 2021, 28,968. What was that transfer from?
That's actually, in 21, the transfer is actually a grant,
Okay, grant funds.
grant funds. That will be corrected at the end of the year, but I have multiple grants running through that account at the moment, and so in order for me to keep track of them separately, I'm running them in other accounts temporarily till year end, and they will get moved to the correct account in at year end.
And then why is the postage so much higher? I'm looking at the right line item. Oh, I'm sorry, that's legal service. I got my lines confused, sorry. Yeah, okay, I understand that.
And it is, illegal is so much higher because we are anticipating a significant increase in an hourly wage. Okay, moving on to building. So the building permits are based on historical data and information that I have found regarding the economy. So I have estimated a flat expected revenue in, expected revenue for building permits. The payroll that's you're seeing on here is internal payroll, the internal current employees. I also have a building inspector that can either be a contractor, share with another community, or a hire. But that's the amount that we will be able to pay that person for 2022 based on the budget. Any questions on building? Okay, going on to public safety. The 6,000 is grant revenue that we get from Post for training, and so under travel and meetings, there is a equal offset of that 6,000. The 182 is the required amount per back the badge. The county sales tax includes the back the badge.
So the 182,000 is back the badge?
No, the 182 is town sales tax that is required to required to maintain per back the badge referendum. Did I say that correctly? Initiative. It's a referendum after. Thank you.
Okay, the sales tax county then, does that include the back the badge money?
It does.
So that's, okay, the county sales tax, all right.
And that is annualized out from our current year.
So I have a question about the police fines. What is the logic about increasing those so much?
Well, that was, that number was selected when we had a full police force. If we get in gear and we have a full police force again, that is the anticipated revenue that can be expected from 6 officers. Right here on the wall.
So I have a question
Says
again
police
on,
fines.
yeah, I have a question on the expenditures under human services. Is that for Dolphin House or is that for something else?
That's Dolphin House and the Center for Mental Health.
Okay. And how much is going to each of those?
$500 to Center of Mental, 50 to the Dolphin House.
Thank you.
And that is proportionate to the services that we receive.
And then it looks like the data processing is going to be a lot more too. What's that based on?
Data processing also includes computers, the computers in the police department are out of date and very shortly will not be supported. So our option, we haven't had new computers, desktop computers in the police department since Steve Robbie was here. So it's well over 2014.
The line item leaves one.
And we only have 10,000 budgeted for computers. I'm sorry?
The line item leads you to believe it's going to cost that much for data processing. I think if you're going to show the computers in there, you should break them out into a different line item. So people understand. Be my suggestion.
That is software and equipment. Is that it? All right, parks. So there is some information coming from the state that there is a potential for our severance and mineral leasing to increase. I don't predict that it will increase. We haven't gotten our payment this year yet. It should be here, should have been here already. And so I am being very conservative on the severance and mineral leasing. But the other impact is going to be if you choose to go with the plan of waiving the fees for the parks, then you're looking at having to come up with another $2,700. So keep that in mind, please. The capital outlay for parks includes we need to do a bathroom upgrade. Do you remember what that is? The bathroom upgrade that Travis was talking about. What did we have to do? I can't remember. We'll get back with you on the bathroom upgrade. There's something with the bathrooms, though, that require us to we have to do an upgrade. Then we have carrying forward that time still hasn't permitted, peony beds, grass improvement, finishing the path at Apple Valley, and the hill stabilization that's required by or that's been recommended by CIRSA, not required, recommended, for Apple Valley Park. We are on parks, revenue, and expenditures, and it's on the wall. It's on the, I don't have a packet, I can't tell you what page.
So the stabilization, is that storage building that is listed as dangerously poor condition in the asset inventory?
No. The hill stabilization is the dirt The hill, the dirt hill, we need to put grass seed.
Okay.
And go ahead.
The capital expenditure is the commodes, they need replaced.
Okay. So what about that storage building? It's in dangerously poor condition. That's why I really wish we could have discussed the asset inventory as part of this process, because there's some stuff in there that needs to be done. The pole barn needs to be taken down. It is considered a threat to human life, the pole barn at the clock plant. And this storage building is dangerously poor, and I think both of those need to be priorities.
So since CIRSA is only recommending the hill stabilization, do you remember, did SGM give us a figure on that?
They didn't give a figure on that specific
Which
thing.
building are you talking about?
It's the one, it's right up against, when you pull into the park, it's on the left, right up against the hill.
Yeah, between the street and the hill, yeah.
Oh.
So they didn't,
They didn't give a figure on that, but they did say that everything that needed to be done down there with the bathrooms and everything was about $13,500.
just in Apple
And-
Valley?
Yeah, and I don't know I don't think that number included that building,
Okay.
but it's mentioned in there 2 or 3 times that building is dangerous, so.
So maybe we can shift some funds around and make that a priority instead of, say, the hill stabilization.
Well, I think that we should think about a parks contractor in this whole thing. We're going to have a total payroll of over $91,000, plus contract services for $3,000. So that's almost $95,000 that we're going to spend in labor on that park, on both parks. Can we get a contractor that will do it for a number less than that?
It's
Well,
not
that's-
that simple.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say, that is not all that is not all Public Works labor in the parks. So this is also, if you're looking, when we get to the payroll part and you look to allocations, you're gonna see where there's allocations. That's also going to be amended based on staffing. So we've put adding the Public Works director separate from public utilities. They're not going to be working on street or on water and sewer. So all their functions are going to be in parks, streets, trash.
Yes.
And so I want to state as well that this 3 years that since the town took over parks, and this is the second year that I had any oversight of that area. And contrary to some belief, we did not wait until we got a lot of pushback from a community. This was an ongoing conversation, and we were dealing with at the Public Works level. The discussion that was had at the beginning of the season was if we weren't able to pull it together and we didn't have staff on hand that could facilitate taking care of the parks this year, and it didn't show significant approval, that we were going for a parks contract. That was the reason that I put out trying to get an idea of what it would cost. It's not an apples to apples comparison with the contract. I am gathering that data to give to the board, which was the direction of the board at the last meeting, to show that, which is a little bit deeper than just the contract amount as well, because while we had a contractor, the contractor was supported by Public Works staff. Public Works did all of the sprinkler maintenance, all the changing of sprinkler heads, any additional work that was needed. The contractor did not do everything in the parks. So I want to make sure that we've got solid, it won't be exact because we weren't tracking it back then like that, but solid data to look at that before the town broaches the subject of a contractor.
Okay, well, we're spending almost $95,000 in labor, something I think we should look at. I'll let it sit there.
So if you get a park contractor and you pull the major portion of the work out of the park, then that payroll is just going to get transferred to streets and trash. And then if we do that, I'm gonna have to pull sales tax from parks to put to streets to cover that payroll. Then we're gonna probably have to do a rate increase on trash in order to cover the payroll. Okay, now any more questions on parks? Okay, streets.
So I'm assuming that the sales tax town then is taking into consideration that we will have marijuana sales tax, correct? Is that why that number is as big as it is?
I'm sorry?
Under streets, the 128,000 in sales tax
No, that
for
does not
town?
include marijuana.
You're not including any kind of marijuana sales tax in that? So
No.
where is the increase coming from then?
That's coming from the annualized out current sales tax. The 3%, 1%
Right,
going to
right.
capital, the other 2% going to the general fund, and it's allocated between the different departments.
Well, it just looks like there's a $25,000 increase through the 2021 budget, and the annualized one is only at 58,000 at this point in 2021.
It's overall annualized and then allocated. So this year it's not, 103 was allocated to the parks. We don't have it all so it's not, the actual and the annualized aren't going to calculate out because the revenue doesn't, when I get it in monthly, I don't split it between I just put it in one of the revenues and then, or one of the departments, and then it's all reconciled at the end of the year.
So have we included any sales tax from marijuana in this budget at all?
Not the sales tax,
Okay, just the
occupational
transaction
tax.
fees. Okay.
I don't have anything to base that on, so I did not budget that.
Okay.
And it's the occupational tax that is to go to, that was voted on to go to the street improvement account. Not street, it's not in streets, it's in capital improvement.
And then the 18,250 under grant revenue, what is that for?
It's a good question. I'm gonna have to get back with you on that one.
Okay. And the same on the 8,250 on reserve?
Yeah, I'll get back with you on that. I see it, I don't know.
Okay,
I'm gonna have to go back and look at my notes.
all right. Okay.
I'm sorry? Okay. Bridge.
Well, we covered the street expenditures, or the revenue. We never talked about the expenditures yet.
Okay.
So you have a huge jump in payroll. What's the reason for that?
Again, the same as parks, where we have, it's how payroll will be allocated.
So you're gonna be putting a lot more man-hours into streets than you have been?
You have more, you have a new, Public Works Director that will just be covering parks, streets, and trash. And and then they have supporting staff.
Under your proposed budget,
I'm sorry?
in this proposed budget,
Yes.
under, let's see,
If you hold the payroll questions, that we can answer those when we go over the payroll itself, if that's okay. It'll make
yeah,
a
that's
lot more
gonna be a
sense.
whole, that's gonna be a whole other subject we have to talk about. You have no money for capital outlay this year?
It's not coming out of, the
Okay.
streets, is just the maintenance. The capital improvement account is where the capital outlay comes from.
Okay.
Okay? Bridge. So, Travis got some estimates on, resurfacing the bridge. It has been noted that is needed. And then there are some other issues that have come up that Travis is researching. We have a guesstimate of what those costs could go up to, and that is what we budgeted. So we will be using 3 years worth of reserves plus the interest to cover the $120,300. What's not used will remain in reserves.
Yep.
It's the spreadsheet Cindy's working off, which is her ongoing working product. She has bridge before street capital, but the packet that was published is street capital before bridge. So we'll go over the street capital and then go back to the bridge if you have questions.
Sorry about that. My bad. So the street capital, bridge is going to be right after street capital, I believe. But we can just go to street capital. My bad. Bridge is it? So street capital, we have the occupational tax of 117,000. That impact fee, I did carry that program forward of 53,000. And then the transfers coming from capital, and then the reserves from previous years. That number will depend on what we end up doing this year, but we have up to 532,000 to use. The 2.5 blocks of Third is estimated at 500,000. So we have just enough saved up at this. We will have just enough saved up in 22 to do that project, and only that project. Any questions?
Again, what is the operational tax?
The operational tax is the $5 fee per transaction that they're required to collect and submit to the town. Okay. So, the bridge is missing out of your packet. I apologize.
Yeah,
But it is up on the wall.
okay.
For the bridge, we have revenue of 300,000 for income, interest, bridge reserves of 40,000, and then general reserves, bridge reserves of 80,000. That's the 120,300, and that is going to be solely spent on resurfacing the bridge.
So there is
And
nothing,
that is a high side. That is not, we are not expecting that project to truly be that much, but we budgeted enough to make sure that the incidentals that have been mentioned, we had plenty to cover should they be required, which is still being researched. But it is all going to the bridge resurfacing. Any questions? So this year we didn't do, as you remember, each year we do, every other year we do major sidewalk repair. And in between we just do emergencies. To date, we have not had an emergency. This is only October. So with that in mind, we have about 31,000 in expected revenue plus the about 33,000 from what was left from 20 and what we expect to collect in 21. That gives us 64,115 to spend on sidewalks.
Just curious, your 2021 actual, 17,932, and from that you annualized it at 26,891. It's $5,000 less. Is there some reason why that is, or I don't understand that?
It's probably the annualizing formula is off. I have double checked the numbers against Cassell's units, and it should come out at the 31,000.
I understand that, you know, the sidewalk fund is the $3 we collect from the water bill. Is there also another fund that if citizens want to do their own sidewalk repair, that the town will reimburse or go in 50% on that?
That comes out of the
That's
sidewalk
part of
as well.
this fund here?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that's what this year with the $555, I believe that was a sidewalk grant. Those grants have not generally been what I consider material, as in they're not very much, they don't turn out to be very much money in a given year. Less than $1,000.
Is it that the public really doesn't know about it? Or it's just not used?
I think it's a combination. I think we have a lot of new community members that aren't aware of all of those programs. I also think that the sidewalk grant program has never been reviewed since it was put in, and costs have gone up. So when you're offering a dollar for dollar up to 500 and it's only on the concrete material, that doesn't get you very far. It is one of the items that's been on the list that I would like to review. But again, we tread pretty lightly with programs where the entire town is supporting individual, although we all use the sidewalks, so.
We do need the sidewalks. Thank you.
So the pass-through grant fund is solely for grants that are coming only through us. They literally, the money comes to us and then it passes through to another entity that has got it through us. Right now, we have two potential. One is a wildlife, the Turner Ditch thing that's on the agenda tonight, and the skate park are the two items that we currently have budgeted last year and this year. And they will roll forward until they either happen or get pulled and are not, we know they're no longer going to move forward. You need to go up to the microphone, pretty please.
I know you have it on the wall, but it would be helpful if you said what page you were on when you project it, because you were just talking about the pass-through, and I have no idea where you were looking at. I'm trying to write some notes.
We'll get that. Just a minute, please.
Okay, thank you.
It's page 14, Suzanne.
At the last meeting, we got a lot of negative feedback for not having printed copies and directing the community members to use the published packet. And so in response to that, we printed some packets, but their packet is not a full packet, it's just the budget documents. So I've gotten a copy that they have and can reference the page number.
Thank you.
It's page 11 of your packet, Suzanne. Any questions? Okay, next, we're going to go to the Conservation Trust. These are the lottery funds that we receive. And again, I'm budgeting to potentially spend all of what we have to date. That may not turn into actuality, but a couple of the items that we are intending to spend it on is tree trimming, per the reports from the Forest Service, and then also finishing the covered shelter by the playground, and yeah, it's still going to come out of this money. And finally removing the bark that is around the playground area and putting in pea gravel as suggested or recommended by the SRSA auditor. Any questions? Page 13. And this is Capital Improvement Fund. And so again, we intend, or we are allocating to spend all of that money. That's what it's there for. And so the carryover and adding the $230,000 in sales tax revenue.
For clarification, the page that she's referencing is the page behind page 22 in the packet that you're looking at. You're welcome.
And just to note, that has been updated and consolidated. And I will put a new one. New one will be on ClearGov. The consolidated one will be on ClearGov. We're still intending to finish the building code update. We still have plenty of projects in Town Hall and around Town Hall that need to be improved. Again, we have computers that need to be upgraded that are not in the police department. The bike rack that's on here, I believe that's gonna be done this year. I just haven't taken it off yet because I believe it's out there. Just haven't been billed for it yet. The vehicle for the police department, that is to replace the one that we got from Delta County, I believe 4 or 5 years ago. And it had a number of miles on it when we got it, since we only paid $3,500 for it. And it's about to die. So this will replace that, unfortunately. It is budgeted significantly more than we've had to budget in the past because we had a police chief that outfitted them. We do not have that any longer, so we will have to buy it outfitted. And outfitted, that's what we're looking at.
Yes, Bill.
Where are you reading? Well, I don't see anything about police vehicles on that page.
Yeah.
Now, you may have a line items that fill out capital outlays, but we don't have that.
This page. I just picked a copy of it.
Oh, that one. Oh, okay. Okay.
There are separate attachments in your packet.
Right. Yep, okay. Got it.
I understand that it's confusing, but I can't provide the electronic version and the printed version that's requested by the community. So that's why it's out there this time, so that everyone was able to have the paper copies.
So the resurfacing of that apron at the airport, is that included in this? Is that
It is. We have
60,000?
667,800. The county has requested about 12,000 of that. That money can only be used at the airport.
Right,
So
correct.
as long as we have the amount needed, so when you look at the budgeted amount down here, right down here, you'll see there's 48,000 on the bottom line. We're back
jumping
to
back
the
and forth.
original capital.
Okay. Okay.
So
it.
I'm leaving, there's anticipated to be 48,000 left after they do their request. So that will just maintain in reserves, and that is not budgeted to use. The 48,000 is not budgeted to use. We have over budgeted for those expected repairs in case they're higher than anticipated. Then we don't have to revise, but we will be maintaining whatever is left in reserves, but at least the 48,000. If it goes over into that 48,000, we'll have to come back for additional allocation.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we were complying with our MOU with the county. Okay. Bill?
Okay, so on the blue page,
Yes?
you have total of 336,428. Where do I tie that number back in? on this, capital improvement page.
It's within that, expenditure of $626,000.
Yeah, but, you have capital outlay of 372 and transfers of 254. We haven't talked about transfers yet.
So
But I
the,
don't see a number that says 336, 428.
there is not, because, there's more involved in, you have three different on this form, there's three different sections that has now been consolidated, but, that is,
Well, it makes it really hard to follow when you can't tie a number back. And then you have nothing.
I'll
under-
work on that for you.
You have nothing under airport expenditures. You said we're gonna spend money there, I know we are, but that's not listed on your capital improvement.
I will fix that as well.
Thank you. And what's the transfers for?
The transfers is what's going for the street from capital improvement to this capital street improvement. It's street money that's
Yeah.
going from capital
Well,
improvement.
I understand that now, but I mean, it makes it very difficult to follow when that doesn't match up. You don't tell me what the terms are. Thank you. I understand it now. And another question on the capital expenditures, the snowplow truck. Are we gonna buy, are you anticipating buying another truck?
We we have budgeted for 3 trucks total. You've approved 2 trucks this year, and there'll be 1 more truck, budgeted for next year. And it's not snowplow truck, it's vehicles for the public utility department for people to drive.
Well, it says snowplow truck.
That's up there, that's the one that's currently, you've already approved that one to currently be purchased. It
That's
has not-
2021. If you look, it's the 2021, and then you have 2021 requests and 2022 requests. So this is a running sheet based on what's been approved, what's still outstanding to pay for, and so it doesn't fall off of here until we're invoiced and we pay for it.
So this was a truck that was approved for purchase this year,
Yes.
but we're gonna pay for it next year.
No.
At the top is,
But we have to carry that money until it gets paid for.
so the only requests for 2022 are in the bottom section of the blue page. 2022 requests, it's just under public, so it's administration, police, public works. There's a truck, but it's not for snowplow equipment. Although the snowplow is interchangeable to most of the public works vehicles. The blade can be moved and placed on different vehicles.
Okay, so I'm looking at the bottom section.
Correct, where it says 2022 request.
For the new requests.
And the overlay is streets,
That's overlaying, that when the county comes in and overlays
Okay.
the streets like they did in Meadowbrook this year.
and, so that's separate than the 500 some thousand approved for, or in the budget for Third Street.
Correct.
And then the equipment, what does that include?
That is to be determined. It's equipment to be replaced or
Right.
obtained so that they can do their jobs.
Whenever they need to replace a saw or a drill or anything like that, those are lined out through an equipment that you budget because you can't anticipate
Yeah.
of course, what will break.
Okay, now, on the first top section, you have the airport share is 60,000. You don't anticipate spending that this year?
No, we're gonna spend a portion of that in 2022.
Then you got town hall upgrades. You anticipate spending that?
Not this year, but we are gonna carry it forward to spend it in the future.
So those are just things that we approved in prior years that we haven't bought yet.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yes, those are allocations that we've made in years past that we are carrying forward until they get done or reallocated.
So you'll work on cleaning up your expenditures so we can understand them and they all tie back together?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
On to, yes?
It would be nice, before we approve any vehicles, to have a list of all the trucks, all the vehicles that Public Works already has, because they have a lot of trucks, and know the mileage, know what's wrong with them. I mean, there are a lot of trucks, and I would really like to see some just solid justification for why Public Works needs a new truck.
Okay, so just for reference, we haven't bought Public Works a new vehicle in the 10 years I've worked here. The 3 newest vehicles they inherited from the police department. They are old, they are worn down, some of them have stopped running, and so like we had to replace and keep up the police department vehicles, we have to do the same thing with Public Works vehicles. Each Public Works employee has a vehicle to drive during the day while they're working to do their job and to carry their tools in, et cetera, et cetera. So these are pickup trucks. Some of them we convert from a work vehicle to a snowplow in the winter months. But, and then we do have some that are, in fact, I think all of our snowplows are, I think we have one sander truck that is solely for plowing and sanding, because that's difficult to, it can be taken on and off if necessary, and we can use it as a spare. But you know, if we have about 10 employees, and they're all driving old high mileage vehicles, but we will get you a list, yes. But that's just for reference. Okay, so we're on water. We're gonna go through this briefly because well, we got water, sewer, trash in 15 minutes, so. I think we can generalize it. So we are not gonna go into water deeply, because I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of questions on the increase that I have booked here. It's on page 14 for those that are looking at a paper packet. We're not going to talk about the increase at this time, but know that I did have to budget an increase for this to work. I also have the grant funds from.
No, I was just going to add a side note that this increase does not in any way factor in any kind of salary, wages, or anything like that. Those allocations do not affect what this is. This is solely based on the projects that we know we have upcoming within the next 1 to 3 years.
It's solely for the current project that's looming on us. So it does include the grant funds that you approved to go towards the lining of the tank. It also uses all of our excess reserves. That we maintain the debt ratio of 110%, but it is using all of the reserves. And that pays for the normal maintenance, and that has increased because the costs are increasing. But most importantly, we got an update on the tank lining, potential update. And one, the cost has increased significantly. Two, they're anticipating it to be between, at the low side, $750,000, the high side, $1 million. So I have budgeted $850,000+, and to make that work, these are the revenues that we're going to have to use to accomplish that. And that that's 825,000. 25,000 is still scheduled to be used for engineering of the raw water storage. The 825,000, if it does go over that and hits closer to the $1 million, we're going to have to use our excess reserves as matching funds and acquire funding. I did not budget it that way. I did budget it without needing the additional funds, but we can't use the grant funds we already have as matching funds, so therefore we will have to use our excess reserves as matching funds. And I'll leave it at that.
I do.
Continue.
Go ahead, Tammy. You asked before because your question may be related.
I don't think we can afford raw water storage. Can we reallocate that and prioritize that? Because raw water storage is a long way out there for this town. The cost of it is in the millions and millions of dollars, but we've got things that don't cost millions and millions of dollars that can help the system. So I think we need to have a real discussion about what the water priorities are, because storage,
So
we're not going to get storage done anytime soon unless this money just falls out of the sky.
So you're correct. It's so again, it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And so first, I want to state that we don't anticipate that the tank lining is actually going to cost that much. But what we're basing this on is that our engineer is working on a project that's similar in Fruta or Grand Junction, one of the two communities. And they found when they got into the tank that there was some additional work that drove the cost up. And these are cost estimates that they're seeing. And basically what SGM brought back to us was they said, look, this is what we're seeing. Do we want to anticipate and start planning now for contingencies? They're also looking for funding, knowing the limitations on what we can use for matching should we need it. But again, we know that if that tank goes down, then we're in real trouble. So we know we need to do it. And so it's a hit to plan for that much, but it's necessary. When it comes to the raw water, part of the reason that we've kept that in and kept pushing, one, of course, we've discussed this prior to our infrastructure analysis. It is one of the recommendations from JDS Hydro, as well as in conversations that we've had with when it comes to raw water, CDPHE, the Colorado Rural Water Association, there's a lot of opportunities for funding for raw water through other entities, but you've got to have the engineering. You have to have that piece. And so we try to put that in, but just like we had that 25,000 in this year, and we didn't do it because it didn't seem feasible, a good use of those funds this year, so we didn't. So we keep trying to put it in. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen. A lot of that would be contingent upon where the tank comes out, but that's an early spring project, and so we want to plan for that first.
And like she said, that tank lining will come first, and if we use it for tank lining, then it's not gonna happen. It'll go to the tank lining. But if we do have it left over, then we have it budgeted to do that also, if we don't use it up in the tank lining.
Bill?
Why is the data processing so much more? You go from 13,600 to 38,000.
Because of the SCADA system, that's a lease at $1,710 per month. This year we budgeted $1,710 for the year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It was supposed to be per month. Okay, on to sewer. Sewer's pretty explanatory. Nothing out of the ordinary in the revenue. The 150,000 that says that it's rural development is actually the debt service for the AMCO bond. I need to change the label on that. And I did, and I've caught that earlier and changed it. And then so the capital outlay, there are two major projects that need to be done in sewer. Both of them are about $500,000 each. One of them is sludge removal, and the other one is nitrification treatment. Those are both new requirements, and we are just beginning to budget for that. So in other words, the excess that there went to start building the funds for those two future projects. And those we'll need to get matching funds to then go after grant opportunities for those in the future.
Well, on this sheet you have a capital outlay of $33,558. What's that for?
That's what I was just talking about.
So
That's
you were talking $500,000.
correct. That's what we're throwing at $1 million worth of projects. That's what we have left to start throwing at it. If you want to do a larger contribution to throw at those projects, you're going to have to raise rates.
So those projects are not projects that are anticipated to be done in 2022. These are long-range goals that we're starting to build funding for. And so this is the portion without doing any. So the only fund that we've put forward to the board that is in need of an increase is the water. There's nothing in sewer, and you'll see there's nothing in trash. And in order to maintain and start putting money, that's what we would start putting toward those projects.
Okay.
Any other questions? Tammy?
It's not a question, but I just want all the trustees to be aware, in this asset inventory on page 4-2 is an explanation of why it's very possible we'll need a new plant in the near future. And they currently are saying that that price of that plant would be about 14 million. So something we need to look at on the horizon. Everybody needs to be aware of that. So page 4-2.
Trash fund? Trash fund, 3 minutes, let's go. So we have nothing unusual out of the trash fund. We are not recommending an increase. This fund, you'll see that I did budget for depreciation. The other two funds, I did not budget for depreciation. That was a mistake I made. We're going to have to visit that at a later time in this process. And expenditures are in line. And again, the payroll allocations are the increases in employees or in staffing.
Is there anything else you want to cover in the next 2 minutes?
Any other questions?
Say that really covers it. You'll notice it's about a half, that we reduced the cleanup, moving to a 1 day instead of a week long. So we always say every year trash is trash. It's pretty self-explanatory, although we do anticipate, and when you get into the some of the written descriptions, when you are looking at ClearGov at that full budget, you will see that we are anticipating in the next year or two to start budgeting to move to the tote system and away from the manual tipping of trash.
I want to go over, if we skip down to the payroll really quickly, I'm just going to give you a very brief explanation of what you're looking at so that you can look at it and we can review it at the next work session.
That was not printed.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, Suzanne, we are out of time. So we'll see about the next work session. We just needed to get through the explanation of the budget.
It would be super
Yeah.
helpful if you would email your comments, if the public could email their comments to Corinne so that we can have time to prepare answers for them for the future work session. So the payroll, you have the administrator as is, finance as is, deputy as is, finance clerk as is, treasurer, if you're going to replace them, this is what I've budgeted to replace them with. The chief, that is a replacement salary. Sergeant is as is. The first officer is as is. The next officer is as is and has been hired. We have 2 open officer positions and a clerk position, and then the judge. Public Utilities Director is as is. We have 2 open utility assistants, one with a license, one without a license. We have Public Works Director, which will handle streets, parks, and garbage. The Public Utilities Director will handle water and sewer. We have 3 laborer positions, a trash truck driver position, who turns into a laborer after trash is done, a trash laborer, which turns into a regular laborer after trash is done, and a seasonal employee that will be for summers. And then we have the trustee mayor positions. And then the last page is a summary. The increases are 3% of total wages. And that's it.
All right, well, we're at 6:17, and we do need to take a break, so I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to a close. We'll be back here at 6:30.
Trustee Bear? Trustee Bettinger? Trustee Johnson?
Here.
Trustee Knudsen? Trustee Meck?
Here.
Trustee Pattison? Mayor Bachman?
Here. All right, we have a quorum and can continue. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Do you have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next on the agenda is the recognition of visitors and guests. This is the opportunity for people to address the board about something that is not on the agenda. Who would like to speak tonight? We have how many people? We have 4. Okay. All right. Let's start with Mr. Bruner.
So, Bill Brunner from Paonia. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm trying to, the mask is to protect you. What's not on the agenda is the moratorium and the inventory of infrastructure and the estimates of required monies in the near future to maintain what we've got. I can't understand why it's not. For the last couple of months, I've kind of been one of a few people that have been addressing the board, and we've had, you know, there's kind of some tussles and stuff. We've been going through some basic civics lessons, like, can we throw people out of a meeting when they say things we don't like? Well, no. Are there laws and norms that the board has to deal with? Yes. Are there limits to the actions of trustees and staff? Yes. Are there policies that need to be followed? Yes. And I got to say, there's been a lot of resistance from some leaders. There's been, I think, a lot of acceptance of some of the thoughts that have been put out by the board. I think a lot of times the board acts on things that the public brings up, and there's a better result because of it, and I want to acknowledge that and say thanks. But when it comes down to the town dealing with our infrastructure and the moratorium, I don't see anything happening. And I see, what I think I see is the town now in the budget process looking through the wrong end of the telescope. Starting the budget process with a discussion on raises for people that already make a substantial sum of money. And there's kind of an ad hoc throw in some money for infrastructure. And personally, I am trying to pivot and focus on what really matters. I don't really know what to do about this wrong end of the telescope view that the town is taking. I can't do anything myself, depends on other people. But a referendum to reject the budget is one possibility. So I urge you to think twice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. Ms. Pattison.
Shireen Patterson, Rio Grande. Thank you for that. That was very good. I was going to mention something like that, but I have another comment as well. Rio Grande parking on the street, trailers, campers, plenty of cars. For one or two houses, I haven't even been able to park in front of my own house. Many nights, many days. What's the deal? What is the procedure to go through to get these other cars off the street? I don't think these people don't even live there. Is there a procedure? Is there somewhere to complain? Is there somewhere to...
Yes, correct.
So, on-street parking is public parking, but if you have vehicles that look to be abandoned, or trailers or vehicles that have not moved,
campers
have not
moved, that are for sale, that are once in a while moved into a driveway and then parked outside on the street.
and that
I
would
arrive
be
late at night. There's cars in front of my house. I don't know who they belong to. There's nobody around. There's no lights on in any house.
town ordinance allow on-street parking is open to anyone. There is no private or assigned parking. But if you have vehicles, campers, trailers, or any other anything on the street that doesn't move in 72 hours, you can report it to the police department. I would add, of course, the caveat that the police department currently has 2 staff members, so that may be a low priority response. But that is the ordinance. Public street is open to anyone, but any vehicle parked on the road is supposed to move every 72 hours, even if it only moves an inch.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Stephen Keenan on 514 3rd Street. And I'm on my way over to congratulate Alyssa for the completion of a fantastic farmers market that you should all be proud of, that you helped put together. They're closing down at 7 tonight. I also have to charge up a tablet. discussing, I just briefly heard the budget with Cindy. And something that we have discussed in the past, there's an outfit in Chicago that I think should be looking at, I think that we should reach out to them and ask them for their assistance with the water situation. Airdiffusion.com should be, they love Colorado, they've done projects here, I've done projects with them on the Front Range. And this is a family, it's a family-owned business in Chicago. They have proprietary inventions concerning keeping water sparkling clean, have worked worldwide, very well respected in the water business. And I think as a backup for the engineers that we're already working with, especially when it comes with Tammy's talking with the raw water, airdiffusion.com. This is a proprietary invention they have, and it's a family-owned business that loves Colorado and be more than willing, if asked with the right etiquette, Madam Mayor, to give us a lot of assistance on that issue. And I think next year on the farmers market in the park, we should have a volleyball court. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Ms. Watson.
Thank you. I actually didn't raise my hand, but I did want to say something, so thank you. I understand there's a vacancy on the Planning Commission now, and when is that going to be announced to community members? I didn't see it in the packet.
It isn't being announced to community members. We're reaching out to the members of the Zoning Board of Adjustments Board of Appeals that are within town limits to see if one would be interested in a seat on the Planning Commission.
Okay, that's actually that's a creative solution to the issue. So
two birds, one stone.
okay, and then I also wanted to know, is this training in Delta still going forward with the Planning Commission?
The training is going forward. We've reached out to request information about seating accommodation because the initial invitation stated that it was only for the Planning Commission members.
Okay.
So I'm waiting to hear feedback on what the attendance can be from each community.
Because the Delta Planning Commission has a different description than the Paonia one. They are the Zoning Board of Adjustment too, from what I can tell in their ordinances. So it would seem like they are taking on two different roles, and it would be completely appropriate perhaps to have that, our commission be involved in that as well, if it's the same topics, involving the same topics.
I wouldn't disagree, but as they're the host and they've invited us, we need to confirm their accommodation before the town was to invite a large group of people to attend their meeting.
Okay, it's only 3 more people, but, or 3 more people maybe. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the Delta Area Chamber of Commerce. Is someone here to address the board? Okay, I guess not. All right, let's move on to announcements. The board received an email from Trustee Pattison that she would like, that was supposed to be put in the packet. We missed it, so I'm going to read it to the public. At the 9/28/2021 regular meeting, the interim administrator review was included in the agenda as part of the mayor's report. The administrator had to leave the meeting early due to illness, and this was the last item on the agenda. When the item came before the board, I made a motion to add this topic to an upcoming agenda. My motion was followed by additional discussion of the administrator's roles. My goals were 1, get the discussion on a future agenda, and 2, clarify the legal requirements of executive session versus open meeting for that discussion. At one point, I said there are items within the administrator's contract that are not getting done. I crossed the line with this statement and should have held that for a further discussion in the administrator's presence. I want to apologize to Corinne for making such a statement when she was not present to respond, and to the board and public for contributing to a conversation about personnel that I feel went beyond what was appropriate at this meeting. Thank you. Do we have any other announcements from the board? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to staff reports. The administrator's report. Corinne.
I included a written report in the packet. I also, for reference, included an updated water data spreadsheet. I put the numbers that were given to you at the 9/14 meeting that I wasn't present for and as well as started to modify to account for the two different two different plants that are now being operated. I've also included under the administrative report the blotter for August and September, since you had not received those. They're in the packet under. So there's the agenda summary form that says administrator report. It's page 44. The first document, page 45, is the updated water data spreadsheet. You'll notice September is highlighted, and the reason for that is upon some discussion with Travis, it seemed to make sense that the monthly data that you're receiving from the plant would be in line with the monthly data that we receive from Cassell when we're doing reading and billing. And so that's why you see that yellow highlight and the note below that's also highlighted that explains that the data's changed to match meter read dates. So September 2021 is August 15th to September 15th data, because that's the period we read the meters. This moving forward will be more in line so that we're seeing our production versus our sales and on the same timeline. Also, you'll notice that there's modified lines that are now added at the bottom, because when you're looking at total water produced or water sold, that doesn't differentiate between which plant made the water. So we've moved those boxes to the bottom to account for water sold. No bill accounts water that's used, that of course is for the no bill accounts that are metered. You know, we have a few that are still not metered but are on the list to have meters installed. And then below that, starting on page 46, is the August blotter, and followed immediately by the September blotter from the police department. And then I think you have included also for board is a copy of the finalized letter that was submitted on behalf of the Trails grant that was approved at the special meeting for the board and the public's review. The previous town attorney's memo that was not included in the packet at the last meeting, it was given in paper form, so we've included that in the packet. And then, oh, wait a minute. You guys don't have my written report, do you? Well, apologies. I would be happy to pull it and just tell you what's on it if you'd like me to, and then include it next time. So give me one moment. I apologize, I didn't realize it didn't attach. Let me see here. Licenses have been received and reviewed regarding marijuana establishments for the town. The public hearings are scheduled for, this says the next board meeting, but they're actually scheduled for the November 9th board meeting. Updates. There are currently 191 town red meters, both in and out of town, that are still in need of replacement, which means approximately 83% of all meters read by the town have been replaced with remote read readers. The bid openings for the pedestrian bridge project with WSCC and the Nature Connection is scheduled for October 27th, 2021 at 2 p.m. here in the community room. The discussion of use for the remaining Betcher funds in support of the Paonia Creative District will be on the next agenda. The first full month data set has been gathered and will be provided to JDS Hydro and the Advisory Water Committee this week. The Brownsfield Grant Award for the Twin Lakes property is on the agenda. We are scheduled with SGM to attend the November 9th board meeting to present the asset inventory and GIS mapping. The Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for October 21st at 4 p.m. This meeting will touch on topics such as the master plan and the dark skies ordinance. Upcoming information with no solid date confirmed and in no order of specific importance. An agenda item regarding costs associated with the bulk fill station in relation to the current fee structure is forthcoming. I had anticipated to have that for you in this meeting several weeks ago, but due to my absence, I'm planning to have that at the next meeting. The electronic billing, we continue to look into that so that people can view their bills online and pay online. What we found is that currently the way that we have our billing, there's not a cost associated with the town when it comes to being able to pay online, and moving to some of these electronic billing options, there's costs associated with that. So we're doing our due diligence and looking at multiple companies to bring information back to the board to look at that for future budgets. Discussion of the expenditure for the final $5,300 approximate undesignated for the Revitalize Grand Avenue grant will be coming before the board at an upcoming meeting. These funds need to be expended by December 31st. The shared building department data has been provided to the city of Delta, and we continue to work on a proposal for board review. The building code ordinance update to the 2018 code is in discussions with the town attorney, and that revision will be coming before the board soon for review. Non-conforming ADU update as far as where they're at. I just want the board to be aware. That's a little tricky to figure because we have to physically go out there other than places that have been reported. I have to physically go out and drive and walk up and down the streets and try to identify any ADUs, because any ADU right now in the town is primarily would be non-conforming. Because it's not permitted in our ordinance. So that's tricky because someone could have, you can have a shed, you can have an outbuilding that's not being used as an ADU, and I don't want to inaccurately provide information. In 2022, the geology class from the Colorado Rocky Mountain School will be coming to Paonia to conduct a geothermal viability survey as a class project. This is still in the discussion phase, and there's no cost associated. This is an opportunity for the students, and also will be utilizing some fantastic knowledge. I'm going outside of what's written now, from different people that work in this field, including individuals that have worked on geological events such as oil spills and how they've affected in different aspects. And so I'm really excited about this. They're going to come and do that throughout the town, and they are just now starting to put together what that would look like so that we can give that information to the board, and then they plan to come to the board to provide a presentation when they complete the project. And that was all that's in the written report.
All right, questions for the town administrator from the board? Yes, Mick.
Thank you for your report. I would also like to thank you for the water report and the more detail that you're giving us, every time. It's nice to see the totals to date, especially reassuring that the spill amount is about 14% of the water produced. I think that's pretty good for the dry year that we had. So thank you very much.
Questions? Yes, Bill?
Well, I had a question on the police report. There's no dispensation, the usual citation, warning, that kind of stuff.
A new person has to learn how the previous chief did that.
Okay, all right. Secondly, I approached a Public Works Director, Travis Loberg, last meeting about getting a small patch put in a sidewalk because I had a complaint from a disabled individual that couldn't get her wheelchair across that. No action was taken on that, although he said he could do it quickly. she's getting her wheelchair stuck in a crack right up next to the train tracks, and so it could be a health and issue. I think it should be taken care of right away.
Can you,
But Travis knows about where it's at.
Travis is out for the rest of the week, so if you could provide it to me, then I can address it.
Yes, it's on the south side of the railroad tracks on 3rd Street. It's where on the east side where the blank provided by the railroad meets the asphalt, the small area of the asphalt. I have a picture I'll show you after the meeting.
Okay.
But I would like to see it get taken care of. That's all.
Other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none. Anything from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the town attorney report. Mr. Nerlin?
No report this month, Mayor.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is disbursements. Can I get a motion on disbursements, please?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve payment of accounts payable in the amount of $49,802.98. The loan payment, the AMCO loan, $11,671.70. Norris Retirement, $1,680. Amazon bill, $26.47. A transfer to the Summit account of $50,000. And a transfer to payroll and payment of payroll in the amount of $19,535.48, and payment of payroll taxes, $8,312.85.
Okay. Can I get a second?
I second it.
All right, questions? Yes, Bill.
The chargers for the John Deere tractor, what were those for? I guess there's a 33G repair. I guess that's a grader.
There's two of them, John
I believe
Deere's.
those are skid steers.
Skid steers.
I believe those are skid steers.
Two different machines or both same machine?
Different machines.
Okay. That's my only question.
Anything else from the board? Okay, anything from the public? Yes, Cindy.
Hold, please.
Close.
The John Deere 333G was serviced, and the other one, track code, repairs. On the 260.
All right, thank you.
And then also, just to make it, the correction clear, the loan payment is to the Water Power Authority, not to AMCO. Thank you.
All right. And we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. We have the meetings minutes from 9:28 and 9:30, and a liquor license renewal from Berg Harvest. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, seeing none from the board, anything from the public? All right, seeing nothing from the public, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. All right, moving on to unfinished business. Continued board consideration of parliamentarian and mayor roles and responsibilities. Included in the packet is, I did email Kevin Baumer about the questions that had been raised about the mayor working to do grants, and you have his response to that. And he also mentions the administrator and I were on a meeting with Dana, I can't pronounce his last name, Helvik. And his comment was that the actual parliamentarian for the town is the attorney. But Kevin Bomber does have, you know, if we want to look at a professional, he has a couple of things for us to look at. I will give you my take on what Kevin Bomber said, and I can quote his email. He basically says that the mayor taking on any responsibilities should be done in consultation with the administrator and with buy-in from the rest of the board. And again, if there is buy-in from the board and it doesn't transgress any assignments or responsibilities that you've collectively assigned to your administrator, then it shouldn't be out of bounds. All hands on deck is the way a lot of small towns with limited staff operate. So the question is, to the board, how do you feel about the mayor taking part in grant research, grant writing, and helping bring some of these things to the board? We have a lot of grant opportunities. We have a lot of projects that need to get done. The other thing that we could do is, aside from being okay with me taking part in this process, is to also authorize the town administrator to get pro bono help. There is a lot of pro bono help out there from very experienced people. And yeah, we can set a contract up with them, but it would be pro bono help. So I would like to get some feedback from the board about this. Yes, Mick.
We need the grant money. And I think the workload that Corinne is under now, she just can't do it. So I agree with the comment, all hands on deck. I would be very happy to see you do grant writing.
Other comments? Yes, Bill.
I don't oppose you working on grant assignments or grant writing, but I think that there is a need to come to the board, tell us what you propose, get buy-in at that point, and then go forward, or not go forward, however the board says.
I would agree 100% with that, which is why we have on the agenda today one of the grants that we propose submitting. Yes, Corinne.
And just as that, in conjunction with the administrator piece, I wanted to add that, and it seems maybe unnecessary, but in support and defense of that is that, again, it's a desire to lean on the strong suits of the people that are leading the direction of the town. Just like when we had revisions to the draft master plan, that's a forte that Trustee Meck has, and so that went to her. And in the conversation the board's had about honing in on people's desires and their specialties when it comes to ad hoc projects, I would feel it's the same. I'm very interactive with the process. I'm just not the one that puts it all into the document. I also would add to the board that that bringing the grants before the board, the reason that wasn't done before is that, again, a lot of new board members, things change. With the previous administrator, he brought it to the board and asked the board, do you want to hear about every grant we're looking at before we apply for it? Or do you just want, if the ultimate approval, should we receive it, to be at the board level? And the board direction at that time was bring the grant before the board if we're actually going to get it. We don't need to approve you going after the money. Go after money if it fits the budget, bring it to us if we get it, so that we can then say, yes, we want to continue in that project. So moving that was just a direction that was given based on a board motion, and I believe the board has already moved to change that process at a previous meeting. So.
Other comments from the board? Okay. Anything from the public? Yes, Paige.
Paige Smith, Delta Avenue. One of the pieces that I think we need to point out in his response is, again, if there's buy-in from the board and it doesn't transgress any assignments or responsibilities that you've collectively assigned your administrator, then it shouldn't be out of bounds. Well, we already know her contract says she develops and supervises grant applications and awards. So I think you're putting the cart before the horse here, because you still have a contract that needs to be fulfilled, and you haven't addressed that. And again, this town, after reading the SGM report, is going to need millions of dollars. And I think you need a professional grant writer to deal with those kind of projects that has engineering, hydrologic experience. Again, nobody who's going to supervise the mayor writing grants. The trustees, are you going to review these? Are you going to review the content? Because that's what you expect the administrator to do, is review the content. So I have to say, I think it's a really bad idea to ask the mayor to write the grants. Nobody's supervising the mayor, and there's certain grants that you do not have the requisite knowledge to do, which are going to be those water grants. You really need someone who understands the jargon, the science, the history, the engineering. So if you were to go and do, let's say, another DOT grant to beautify a park or something, maybe that would be appropriate. But again, I think you need to make sure every grant comes before all of you, before anyone spends time on writing the grant, so that you understand, if you get the grant, how much staff time is going to be needed, how much buy-in do you have to have, because there's been a lot of wasted staff time on grants that were gone after because it was someone's whim, to be quite honest. And I think we have so many needs in this town that nothing can be a whim. There has to be a grant that you're going for, has to meet your master plan, which you don't have. There's no 2-year plan for water, infrastructure, streets, sewers. There's no 5-year plan. So it's time to back off on trying to get volunteer help for something that is so serious in this town, and reverse the order here. You're going to need grants, but you need to know what for. You're going to have to prioritize what needs to be done in this town, and we have the JDS list that Trustee Bear and MEC put together, which is really important. That's not been discussed. We have no idea what needs to be done first. The SGM report wasn't even brought up in the last meeting, and it's not on the agenda again. That is a serious report. There are things that have to be done in this town, or it's going to cost more than they've said. So I know I've digressed a bit, but off this one particular topic, but grant writing is too important to do ad hoc with volunteers. Thank you.
Well, I would like to address that particularly. First of all, in the administrator's contract, it does say develop and supervise. Every grant that goes through this place, Corinne reviews. Nothing walks out this door without her review. There is nothing in the word develop that means write, initiate, begin. It is a process. There are many pro bono, very experienced grant writers. DOLA helps us write our big grants. Region 10 helps us write grants as well. These are professionals that are out there to help towns of our size. CML will help us. So it's not like we're stabbing in the dark and that they're unsupervised, because everything is reviewed before it walks out the door. The second thing is, well, I guess I addressed both of them. All right, yes, Ms. Watson.
So, I don't know, it's
Please,
Suzanne Watson.
Suzanne, thank you.
I live on Main Street. So, the planning portion of this, I don't want to repeat what Paige said, because I think what she said deserves a lot of consideration. Staff time is not free. I've always wondered when the staff, when we do the in-kind contributions of staff time, where in the budget does that come from? Is it going to come from, I mean, when staff is out there painting the streets or doing backhoe work on a trail project, where in the budget is that money coming from? It's not free. It comes from somewhere, and it can mess things up. The whole thing about planning is really important. I'm a little afraid that the way I've seen grants working here is like, oh, this sounds good. It's like shopping the supermarket pullout to see what's on sale. And sometimes you don't get the most nourishing meal put together because it's just what's in front of you at the time. So it's kind of an ad hoc way of planning. I think it's going to be really important for the board to sit down and plan what we're looking at financially in the future and resist the temptation to buy ice cream because it's only 99 cents a gallon. You know, we need to be serious about this. We're a very small town, and there's a real fine line between success and failure. It's a real tippy place to be. And so instead of deciding what we need to do based on what grants are out there, what one or two people are looking at, it would be nice to kind of get the board to say, these are the priorities. This is the water system. Let's start looking for this. Maybe A has to come before B, before C, so we get it in the right order. And just, I'm sorry I didn't prepare a comment. I'm speaking off the cuff. But it needs to be very well thought out and a really good framework to it to be successful. As Brian Tracy says, what proper planning prevents poor performance or something. So planning is so important before you even consider what types of grants you need. Hopefully that was instructive.
Anything else? All right, seeing that, can I have a motion, please, to allow the mayor to participate in grant writing?
I move that the
So
mayor be
moved.
allowed to participate. Second.
Well, wording of the motion, please. Do you want to say yours again, Karen?
I move that we allow the mayor to participate in grant writing, whether that be actual writing or in the design. And, of course, the grants be brought to the board before they begin.
Do you want to second that?
I'll second it, but I think we also need to make sure that these grants are ones that are approved by the board.
Well, let's do this in two parts then.
Okay.
The first part is mayor allowed to participate in the grant process, and then the second part with that all proposed grants be brought to the board.
I second it.
All right. So the first motion is just from the mayor being able to write and participate in the grant process. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion carries. Now, the second part is do your motion
to make sure that all the grants that the mayor works on,
well, it's just all
Well,
grants, period.
all grants period, right, are brought to the board for the board approval.
Okay, do I have a second on that? I don't think so.
Can we do that last? Okay.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that? Yes, Tammy.
I'm going to agree with the public here. I think we need to get our ducks in a row before we write grants. I'm surprised we even can submit grants considering we have a 25, 26-year-old master plan. Yes, if the money comes up, if the opportunities come up, we should take a look at them, but the focus should be on prioritizing what this town needs to do and where we need to look for the money and what grants we need to look at. We don't even have a master plan, and we don't have a priority list for the water. We have not reviewed, and it's not on the agenda, and I think it needs to be on the next agenda. The asset inventory, we need to take a look at these things and figure out where we need money. And I just think that the focus needs to be right now on figuring out what we need.
Other comments from the board? Yes, Bill.
Well, I think this motion only says that grants will be brought before the board. I think that we all need to see it. Whether they...
There was a vote before I could make the last comment, so I had to fit it in there someplace.
What was that, Tammy? I didn't understand you.
This is Her comment was a comment on the last thing and not this motion.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, well, okay.
Anything from the public? Oh, I'm sorry, Mick.
I don't think we can wait until the master plan is complete to go after these grants. We need the grants. We know what we need. We need to help the water infrastructure. We have a basis from the engineering company of what we need to do. We need to reline the 2 million gallon tank. You know, there's things out there that we can do now to get grant money for.
Yes, Tammy.
I'm not disagreeing, and I think we should go after those grants, but I think we're focusing too much on the grant process before we focus on what we need money for. And yes, I mean, if there's a grant out there that would help pay for the lining of the 2 million gallon tank, absolutely, look for it. But in the meantime, we need to focus as a board and as staff on getting this master plan done and getting our priorities straight. We don't have a plan, and we can't wait another year. That one of our big goals was to get this plan done. Again, I'm going off subject, I get it, but we have got to get the focus onto this plan and get it done before we focus on, you know, who writes grants. And it's just getting really frustrating that we're not prioritizing, that we're not looking not only at the big picture, but at where we're going to get in trouble if we're not working on this stuff. So, sorry, I think I'm just speaking from frustration right now. We need a master plan. Yeah, we need grants, but we need a master plan, and we need to prioritize this list, and there are other things that I'd rather be talking about now than whether or not you can work on a grant.
Yes, correct.
May I? Okay. So I want to add a little bit, because I think that we're not getting into the weeds as in outside of what you should be focused on, but I think we're looking at definitely from that place of frustration. And so what I'd like to add to this conversation is that one of the master plan update, looking backward doesn't really do much, but it is important to know some history. And we have a master plan. Our master plan should have been started to been looked at for updates 19 years ago. That our master plan is 24 years ago, and you're supposed to review your master plan frequently and look at it to see where updates are necessary. The best practice is at least every 5 years. So 19 years ago, a process should have started, and it didn't. And then it started about 12 years ago, and it stopped. And then it started again, and with a previous administrator and an intern. And then that administrator was removed, and the intern no longer provided that service. And so it stopped again. And then I've come into the position, and the board direction to me, and some of this I do feel is a little bit premature, because the board voted to have a conversation about what my contract and my roles and responsibilities are at the November meeting, and we're really talking about some of that now, but it's germane to the conversation, is that one of the goals was get the master plan updated. We started that initially in-house, because typically first response for anything that has been done historically in the town is to try to do it in the least costly fashion. And some things, I know there's many that will disagree and think we like to do things the expensive way. And that's not working. It was made very clear after the first draft review that that wasn't going to work. Our planning commission doesn't have that strength to draft a master plan. That's not typically the way communities address it. So back to me, and what's the best mechanism to get that done, to get that update done? Let's get someone who that's their job, that's their profession, similar to the conversation that's being had about grant writers. Let's go to the person that has the expertise. And that's why the master plan update is included in the budget. To get that master plan update in 2022, we have to write a grant. The grant conversation was a conversation that was initiated by board members supported by the board and brought back before the board at board direction. So that's why we're talking about it tonight. I think that having clarity when there's been any kind of discussion or accusation that someone's operating outside of where they should be is incredibly important. That can only come from you. So it's a valid conversation. I think that using strengths and expertise and outside expertise when that's necessary is incredibly beneficial. But I also want to state that that's not always necessary, because a lot of people don't know that if you look back when we did the updates to the water treatment plants, we secured and leveraged over nearly $10 million in grants, and that was all drafted by a staff member with support from other staff members and board members pulling data and writing those grants. So that's all I want to add.
Anything from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
This is really frustrating to listen to. I understand Trustee Mack's desire to see planning, and I too would like to see that, but I think what you're not getting from your town administrator is the word strategic plan. Write this down, strategic plan. A master plan is really big and cumbersome, but that doesn't mean the town can't be doing some strategic plan, getting some guidance from your administrators saying, have you considered, board, doing a strategic plan for this water system? We can plan 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years ahead for this. It's much more agile. It's not as cumbersome, it's not as long term, but it's an important planning tool, and it's a planning tool that you should be using before grants. It's admirable to think that we can do the master plan, but I do know how difficult that is. It's a huge process, but strategic planning is a very valuable tool that you need to be using for the water system. And hopefully you can get someone to advise you on how you do strategic planning. There was an interim administrator when I started that gave us handouts about the difference between master plans and strategic plans. And a strategic plan is a board that is a tool that the board should be turning to regularly. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, seeing none, we have a motion to have all grants brought before the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, next on the agenda is the surplus item list.
As discussed at the previous meeting, included in the packet is a list of the items that were being that staff is planning to list as surplus items using the public surplus auction site.
Any questions or discussions? Yes, Bill.
Is this the list that you're going to provide, or is there going to be a list that lists equipment dates?
We have to provide photos and extensive information about each item, but following the discussion at the last board meeting, the board voted and stated that all I needed to provide was a list of the items, not the information. I specifically asked that question at the last meeting.
That's fine, that may be. But I was really hoping your answer was there was a more complete list.
Other comments from the board? Yes, Tammy.
I believe we said we wanted to see the entire list, not just a list of items, but everything that the list is. Neither here nor there. But I also thought we'd see some other things too, like some more carts. There are some more little carts that are parked down at the wastewater treatment plant. there are like 5 barrels of brass water meters. There's roofing up at the 500,000 gallon tank. There's a bunch of metal and roofing up there. So there's stuff lying all over the place. And it seems to me, I mean, remembering that last big auction, there was cable, there was fencing, there was all kinds of stuff. There is stuff lying around that I can't imagine is ever going to be used again. Maybe there's some great plan for it, and if there is, it should be out of the weather, it should be protected. But it seems like there is other stuff out there that would be considered surplus that the town's never going to use again. So I was hoping to see a more complete list, and I'm sorry if I somehow completely misunderstood you, but yeah, I was looking at, 2002 Ford Ranger, 250,000 miles, blah, blah, blah. And to see this list was pretty disappointing. I mean, not anything that can't be fixed, but it seems to me that anything that the town is not going to be use. What about computers? Do we have office furniture? Is there anything else? We don't know, so.
So we can do surplus more than once. This was an initial surplus, and again, the last meeting when we went over this, that was exactly what I asked. Via the resolution, we provided all of the extra detail that takes a long time to collect and put in there. And this was specifically the reason I brought it back and had the conversation about other communities don't even provide a list. And the board said they did want to see the list, which I completely had no issue with. And so that was why I provided the list of the items that were included in the initial resolution at the beginning of the year. Brass and things like that go to Recla Metals for recycling, and we get credits for that go back into the town. We receive those off of our bills with Recla Metals and accounts. And will continue to be items that will be added and lists that will be provided, and having to do a less strenuous process allows us to do more of that. Also, when the previous auction was done, there was outside help to facilitate that auction, and that was part of the reason it was set up the way that it was. But I absolutely intend to. We have chairs that we don't use in here any longer. I would like to start replacing these chairs as they're breaking down, and so we can auction some and use those proceeds to replace. And those are all things that have in mind but have not been assessed to date to provide to the board.
Yes, Bill.
When do you expect to have all this for the online auction? Have it all in place? Do you have a deadline?
We'll have all of this in before end of year with photos and everything. It'll be live on their site. So we provide them photos and then go through the process. They then do evaluations for values, and all of that information is uploaded and updated on. And it would be an ongoing process. So I don't have to get the entire list before we start adding things to the site. So the full list would be completed by end of year, but we'll start providing them information immediately.
So when would you expect to start receiving money back into the town?
It would be upon sale. It's on an ongoing live auction site, so it is an open auction until it's purchased.
Okay, so what is the live auction site that you're using?
Public surplus.
Publicsurplus.com?
Yes, I believe so. I haven't looked at it in a while.
Yes, Mick.
So that auction would start the first of the year then, you think, or?
It's an ongoing, every day you can go on it. So as soon
What's
as,
the first day though that you could
as soon as we provide them the information, it's valued and uploaded, it's available for sale.
So it could be,
It could be 2 weeks
okay.
before the first item. I mean, I don't recall from our initial training on public surplus what the exact time frame is for them to do the pricing.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Anything else from the board? All right, seeing none. Anything from the public? Yes, Paige.
Paige Smith, Delta Avenue. I have several questions about actually the content of the list. I was wondering, what is a small maintainer? Is it something big, little?
I'm going to assume it's small, but some of those are going to have, would be questions that Travis would have to answer, because a lot
Okay.
of this is specific to Public Works.
All right. So I'm kind of concerned about the Cushman aerator. Does the town own 2 aerators?
I believe we own more than 2 aerators.
The reason I ask was when my husband went through Town Park with Travis and another gentleman, he really encouraged that the park be aerated at least twice. And I'm just wondering if you have an aerator to do that, and are you getting rid of one that?
No, we do have an aerator.
Okay. And the last question I had was, is this a national site that people from all over the country look at the public surplus? So how do you essentially say, you get this vehicle sight unseen, you can't test drive it, you just have to come and get it, correct?
Correct, it's an auction and just
They
based
just-
on photos and information that's provided.
Okay, thank you. Do one last thing. Would it be possible to revise the 2020 spreadsheet, December 2020 spreadsheet that has quite, I don't know if the trustees have seen this, but it's about 5 pages with a pretty long list of vehicles, equipment, things like that. I've not compared that list to this list, but it seems like it would be really helpful if you updated that. That would be the list of everything, updated it, and maybe identified that these are things coming off of that 5-page spreadsheet. Thank you.
That will be the spreadsheet that's used to provide the information requested by Trustee Mack.
Right, and I just think that would be good to identify that these things are going, and maybe that would then answer why we still have so much old stuff.
Anything else? Okay, Suzanne?
Suzanne Watson. So, I was wondering if there's some way to let the community know that we're auctioning off items. Could there be a link on the town website saying this is the auction site we use, we're getting rid of equipment that you own, and you can bid with everybody else in the nation, but this is the day this is starting? I mean, the thing is, when they had the physical auction, there was a lot of interest in this community, and a lot of people came. There was sales tax. It was held outside of town. They wrote, I think they made $33,000, and that meant sales tax for the county and sales tax for the state. That's not something that, I mean, I don't know, do people have to pay local sales tax when they pick things up on these auction sites? That's question number one. So I was wondering if there's some way to let the public know that we're auctioning things right now, and there's a link you can go to if you'd like to bid with everybody else in the nation. It would just be, let's say, kind of community-minded. And then, you know, when I'm looking at this inventory list that we have, I only see one aerator. I see multiple skid steers, so it would really be nice to know which ones you're getting rid of. And I don't know, is this list that I got in 12 of 2020 updated? Because I only see one aerator, I don't see two. So it would be good to have that information. Another thing is there's a 1998 DT 466F. And I was trying to correlate it with what might be on this list. And I was assuming it could be an international 490 semi-pull truck, but I'm not sure because I don't think, I don't see anything of this description on the inventory list. So it would be really nice to get a little bit more comprehensive description of what you're selling. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Chris.
Chris Kendall, Minnesota Creek Road. Who makes the list and says what we're getting rid of? And does anybody on the trustees look at it and justify why we're getting rid of it, or what? Does that make sense?
Did you want me to answer? Yeah. So the list is compiled by the department heads and discussed, and it would be the staff that then determines the equipment that they need at their work level and the equipment that's no longer useful or has completed its useful life.
Well, but shouldn't that be brought to the board and let them, I mean, like, you've got John Deere skid steer. That doesn't really, there's all sizes, there's different sizes. How many hours is on it?
Typically, no, those are not things that are brought to the board. No. In Town of Paonia did for a few years through resolution, provided that information, but through learning and advising with other administrators and other communities, that is not the way that it's typically done. Typically, a board doesn't even get a list. It's done through the budgeting process and done through the purchasing policy, other than vehicles. Those are the only things that are required to go before the board for an auction.
Well, my thoughts are Paonia is a little different than everybody else, and we've had our own
I would agree.
trials. And, you know, we're always talking about, got to, you know, put it out there so it's out there. And I think the more information you give everybody, the better. And like I looked at that list of all the equipment, and I know there's other things that aren't on that list. And what is the dollar amount that you guys say that has to be on the list to be considered a tool or a implement?
What do you mean, what's the dollar amount?
Like snowplow blades or grinders or, you know.
So based on the purchasing policy, that would be $5,000.
So anything under
But we
5,000.
Track below that.
You don't-
In the fixed asset, it's $5,000, but we track below that. We track, we do inventory every year on what we have, down to screwdrivers.
That would be nice to look at and see on some of this stuff, because some stuff
so-
comes and goes, I know, because we deal with a lot of equipment.
I don't disagree. I'm going to share some frustration here, though, because
That's fine.
because I'm consistently and constantly hearing, give more information, and then we give more information, and then it's, well, you don't give the information correctly, and we don't like the way you present the information, and I don't like the way you labeled the information, and please put it on the website. Why aren't you linking it on the website? Our website is terrible. It's got too many links. Nobody can find anything because it's got too much stuff on it, and we've got to find a way to move forward. So if the board wants list resolution with all the information on it, then we'll go back to that. That takes time. We'll probably bring the surplus back next year. If the board wants more information so that it can go public, that's the board direction. But the amount of things that are consistently, week after week, inside meetings, outside meetings, and brought to the front office is getting untenable for anyone. I don't care if you hire the Pope of town administrators. You're not going to get the level that is consistently being brought. And we've got to find a way to hone this in. We just have to, because this is not, it's impossible to do this. And I know we consistently hear comments and things that the staff and the board have to remember, that we work for the community, and you're right. The board is a representative government of the community, and they direct the staff, but staff is taking a lot of direction from community, and it's causing frustration at the board level, it's causing frustration at the staff level, and I know it's causing frustration at the public level. And regardless of those who would say that I'm being I'm not being genuine here, I'm being disingenuous. I genuinely, I'm telling you that town staff and the board want to work for the best of the community and provide the information, and we honestly are one of the most transparent, if not the most transparent, staff and board that in the county, probably further, but I'm only going to talk about the window I look in.
That's fine. I understand what you're saying.
I just really want to share that, because we're really trying to provide more and more.
No,
you know, and
that's
we
fine.
do. It's larger packets, because give us more information, give us more information. You're burying the information in these ridiculously big packets. It can't be both ways. It just can't.
Right. But on the same token, if you've got it in your bookkeeping system, you should be able to just pull it up and print it if it's already listed. Does that make sense? You know, I mean, that should help. I don't expect, you know.
I know, and I'm not trying to digress and take time. I'm just trying to add some
that's
levity
fine.
to the conversation, and that something that you're already tracking should be easy. But if we're pulling and providing every single thing that we track every single time that we modify it, then we're not getting work done. We're just continually pulling data and providing more data, and we can't keep doing that.
Sometimes it seems like that's what actually goes on, is we're just spinning our wheels and not going anywhere.
I would agree.
And, you know, and I mean, that's kind of the description on this list. It's like, well, we just spun our wheels and we didn't go anywhere. Because, like, you've got a John Deere skid steer. There's umpteen different types of skid steers. There's sizes. We've got John Deere skid steer attachment. Well, we've got blades, we got buckets, we got trenchers, we got whatever, you know, and So we do, on some things, we do need more.
Well,
And if you've already, excuse me, go ahead, Bill.
I think now this is really not the responsibility of Corinne. This properly should fall upon Travis to get this list together. And I'm sure he's going to get it furnished to us before we get to the point it's going to be offered.
Right.
I just looked at this auction site. It's a publicsurplus.com. You can go there. I think it's a nationwide deal. And they'll have to provide pictures and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the board is just concerned about getting this process going, bringing some money back from this excess equipment. And I think that sounds like she's got the process going. So,
And that's fine. I was just concerned about what we're getting rid of, if it's stuff we need or if it's, actually surplus.
well, I think that's
And-
not our decision. That's the
Yeah.
Public Works decision.
And
to
that's
make.
fine, because I was asking the questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Suzanne, you've already spoken on this subject. No, it's okay. You've already spoken on this subject. All right, anything else from the board? All right, let's move on to new business, Western Slope Conservation Center. Comment letter. Mr. Katz.
Ben Katz, Public Lands Program Director for the Western Slope Conservation Center. Thank you for adding me to the agenda today. It's great to talk to you guys. I'm here to talk about the Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forest Plan revision process. I'm going to call it GMUG a lot, so if you hear me using that phrase, just know it's for that big long word. But I provided some material in the packet. There's a lot of information, so I did my best to kind of sum it up into a few documents and maps that hopefully will help the board make a decision. But I want to go over a quick background of the plan and kind of where we are in the general timeline, and then we can kind of get into the specifics, and I won't go into detail unless there are questions. But so the U.S. Forest Service, which manages the national forest that surrounds our town here, is revising its forest plan. It was the one we're operating under now was written in 1983. They attempted a revision back in 2007, I believe, but was halted for other reasons. So they've started again now. The process started in 2017. I came to the town in 2019 when they released a working draft and had the town submit a letter at that time as well. I didn't include that in the packet, but I can provide that. Essentially, the forest plan will direct the management of projects and other implementation procedures on the forest during its lifetime. Again, the current one we're operating under is 1983. Usually they last about 15 to 20 years or so. So it's important time for the town to have its voice heard. So the Forest Service released a draft August 13th, opened a 90-day comment period, which ends on November 12th. So if the board at this time wanted to take 2 weeks and review more information, there's still another town council meeting where that could be done. So I just wanted to, so you have a little time. I know sometimes these comment letters can be a little rushed, or you only have like 2 days to get something written or something like that. So there is a little time. I did include, or in 2019 when I came to the town, I had the town submit a letter for the community in support of the community conservation proposal. I included a map in here. It's basically different special management areas and recommended wilderness areas as we've discovered on our forests throughout the area. And yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. I don't know what the board would like me to go into.
Why don't we take questions from the board, Ben, and they
Sure.
can take direction from that. All right, questions for Ben from the board. Tammy.
So, yeah, there was, I'm trying to remember, this has been a while, but there was a plan, like a citizens plan, a community plan. Does that one still exist, or is that one now more like Plan D?
Yeah, good question. There were actually 5 community proposals submitted to the Forest Service. So the one that the board supported in 2019 was submitted. It's now largely included in Alternative D. There are some areas that were left out, but Alternative D was kind of a mashing of all of the community proposals, you know, some that were just for Gunnison, some that were just focused on outdoor recreation, others just for wildlife. You know, ours more conservation based. So Alternative D includes most of it, not all of it. There are a few spots that I can go into that weren't included, but most of it is in Alternative D.
If you could go into those just briefly, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the best way, and again, I kind of have the static maps here, but the best way is actually to pull up the, if you have this community conservation proposal map, I can just kind of name the ones. So Muddy Country, Electric Mountain, and Pilot Knob. And then, yeah, so those 3, and then there's also this one that's kind of hidden on this map, but it's the Mule Park and Portland Bird Area. Those 4 were not included in Alternative D. The others, the Elk Park, Chalk Mountain, Coal Mountain, and Mendicant Ridge recommended wilderness areas, as well as the Current Creek, Priest Mountain, Flat Tops, and Lamborn. We call them special management areas in the community conservation proposal, but they were included as wildlife management areas in Alternative D. So, so those areas in particular. And you'll see in the packet, I wrote a draft letter, which again can be revised, but it includes support for all of these areas on this community conservation proposal map. So.
Other questions? Okay. I think what I would like you to do, if you would, Ben, would you specifically tell us why this is important for the town board to put a voice out on?
Sure, yeah. So not only, you know, there's been a lot of discussion, not only at this meeting, but in previous meetings about source water. Not only does all of our water originate, drinking water originate on National Forest land, but all water for all farms, not only in Paonia, outside of Paonia, in the North Fork Valley, all originates on our national forests. So anything that happens up there will have impacts downstream. Additionally, protections for wildlife, not only is just good for wildlife, but hunters come in, they eat at our restaurants, they stay in our hotels. You know, it's part of what we're known for here. So if we can continue to protect wildlife species, we can continue to build that economic growth that hunters provide to our community. Additionally, I mean, a very similar argument for wilderness areas, the West Elks, Keebler Pass, all of those exist on our national forests. We certainly see tourism, people coming in to go see the leaves change color, to go fish in Anthracite Creek, up Dark Canyon, go for hikes. All of that is, I think, important to the town because of those economic benefits. And then, of course, there's ecological benefits as well. Just the air that we breathe, the water that the forests provide, all of those ecological benefits that probably are too big to name are also just important for us as residents. I mean, I really think Mount Lamborn, I mean, you've even got a map or a picture of Mount Lamborn behind you. I mean, it certainly defines us as a town. So I think supporting, trying to protect those areas as best we can is really in the best interest of the town. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Bill.
By designating some of this town as this land as wild as wilderness or wilderness research areas, also inhibits the community's ability to permit water structures on them. So I just want the board to keep that in mind, that it all sounds good till you need to gain access to that land to run a pipeline across. And then you'll be denied the access.
Thank you, Bill. Would you like to address that, Ben?
Sure, yeah. Well, I will say that the Coal Mountain recommended wilderness, which is probably closest to where our water originates, doesn't actually include the springs that feed the waterways. So we made sure that that was not included. These areas have been analyzed not by by WSCC and our volunteers, but also by the Forest Service as maintaining high areas of wilderness character. Also, the majority, I would say, most of these areas are already in roadless areas, so they've already been administratively designated for some protections, but these designations will provide the Forest Service more direction to implement wildlife management tactics or manage the area for wilderness rather than just for a roadless area. So I'm happy to talk in more detail, though. If you have concerns, go show you a map in a little more detail.
Well, I'm just going to voice that my opinion is that every time you lock up another acre of land, what you're doing is locking off the public, unless you're willing to walk in there. People don't want to use land like we've historically used it for grazing. There are roads up there currently. What you're talking about is kicking everybody off, so that's my opinion.
Sure.
And my question is, I saw nothing in this about extraction and extractive industries in this. Is that addressed in this plan at all?
So the Forest Service is conducting an oil and gas suitability analysis, but they're going to do that as like a external process. So they will complete this forest plan, and then within 3 years of completion or finalization, they will start this oil and gas suitability analysis, in which they will determine which areas of land are suitable for oil and gas. But I do think coal is included in this forest plan. I might have to double check that one. But so oil and gas is separate. So, yeah.
Yes, Mick.
Yeah, I don't believe that by the board approving this comment letter that we will be withholding anyone from enjoying this wilderness. I think it's something that we do need to protect, and I would fully endorse approving this.
Anything else from the board? Okay, questions for Mr. Katz from the public? All right, seeing none. Can I have a motion?
Allison Elliott, 316 Oak Avenue. The question, I heard a question saying why the town of Paonia should endorse or write a letter in support. Because it's the town. We can write letters as individuals, but being involved in these things for many, many years, I realized that, or it's apparent to me that letters from organizations such as municipalities carry a lot more weight. And so that's why I would encourage my town trustees to write a letter of support in this regard for all the reasons that Ben outlined and you guys have expressed too, is that the wilderness, or I shouldn't say wilderness, the wildlands that surround Paonia are a huge part of what makes this valley so wonderful that people come to be in. And I believe that they're getting more impacted over time, and they're eroding away, and as far as the pristine nature that they were at one time. And of course things do change over time, and we want to be very careful and thoughtful about planning ahead and understanding, rather than closing the door after the barn door after the horses and the cows have left and that you can't repair. This is a plan that would enable us to go slowly and thoughtfully about its development. And it is a development plan. Mr. Bear. It is a development plan in that recreation will be allowed and is considered. Timbering, timbering is actually a very big part of this whole program. Grazing will continue. All the things that we utilize our public lands for will continue, and we will be careful about the wildlife. And unfortunately, we've understood that the wildlife has taken a great deal of impact because of human activity. And so we want to really be careful about that and balance into the future. So again, getting a letter from a municipality is super important, and I'm hoping that we get a letter of support from our county, which is much more difficult. They have so I'd love to see the town that I live in have a letter of support in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion? Mick?
I move that the board approve the comment letter regarding the Grand Mesa, Uncompadre, and Gunnison National Forest Plan revision as provided by the Western Slope Conservation Center.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you very much. We will get that signed and off to you guys. All right, next on the agenda is the Turner Ditch Habitat Project Overview and the Paonia Wastewater Treatment Plan. Welcome.
Hi, so my name is Paul Maudlin, and I live at 14410 Dry Gulch Road. And joining me today is Steve Kostler. He's the president of Turner Ditch and also of Lone Cabin Ditch. And next to him is Mike Zeman, who's our habitat contractor.
Yeah.
Okay, and Cindy's going to drive, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so basically we're here to talk about habitat replacement associated with a Bureau of Reclamation project that we have going. And I don't know if any of the trustees have already seen some documentation on this. There was a draft habitat plan, and we'll tell you what this really means in a moment. But there was a draft habitat plan that maybe was circulated. I'm not sure. I don't see any nodding heads. And there was also a short version of this. So anyway, I'll just assume that you haven't seen much of this stuff. This Turner Lone Cabin Ditch Salinity Project is a Bureau of Reclamation grant for ditch companies and other organizations to apply for grant money for irrigation water infrastructure. That's what it's all about. And this particular project is something that's in hand. Steve Kostler and I have been working for almost 10 years on trying to get a grant from the Bureau of Reclamation. It's a pretty good sized grant. It's about a $6.5 million grant. And it basically combines the irrigation operations of the Turner Ditch, the Lone Cabin Ditch, and a small ditch at the top of Minnesota Creek called the Sweezy Turner Ditch. So anyway, yeah, so combining 3 ditches, we're basically like year 1 into a 5-year contract period to get this project completed. Inside of this project, there's a opportunity for the town of Paonia in that the project itself is sort of an environmental project, and so it is concerned about habitat loss when we go out there, install pipeline, and dry up certain areas of our watershed with this pipeline. And so you get into habitat loss, and that gets scored by the environmental people, and there's a project inside of a project here where habitat replacement is involved, and so projects are looked for. And we've been through several project candidates for this habitat replacement project, and The one we've sort of finally come to grips with is the the Town of Paonia water treatment plant in the area that has been sort of impacted and dried up from installation of that treatment plant. And you'll hear a lot more about this from Mike Seaman. But I sort of wanted to more give you the background behind the bigger project, the irrigation water infrastructure project. And so, Cindy? Oh, okay. So that's, if you back up one, does that graphic show it all? One more. Okay, that one's kind of hard to look at. I don't know if you can see it very well, but basically, pardon? Okay. This has got batteries in it. Or
Yeah.
orange button, right?
Not working real well. Finger.
I've got it back up.
Yay! Oh, very good.
So this is kind of a map of the ditches that are going to be piped as part of this reclamation project. This is the Turner ditch up here. There's a little piece of the Sweezy Turner over here. This comes down on down Minnesota Creek drainage and goes up Dry Gulch and basically, well, it goes above Dry Gulch and then comes down onto Lone Cabin. So that's the Turner side of it. The Lone Cabin ditch side of it is shown over here. You have a head gate above Lone Cabin Reservoir, and then below the reservoir you have water in the ditch that's coursing around Oak Hill here, and then down into, again, landlord Masonville Farm Zone. So this ditch system, if you will, is in our proposal that's been funded is to be replaced by a pressurized pipeline. And that's what it's all about. Of the 6.5 million, there's probably about 5.5 that's actually spent on installation. So inside of that, what's required by reclamation is 5% of the construction costs are allocated to a so-called replacement, habitat replacement project. And again, we've kind of focused on the Town of Paonia treatment plant and what's happened to the habitat around that plant. And we're proposing that the Town of Paonia, this is a grant that's already in hand, doesn't require any work. All you have to do is basically embrace the aspect that we would like to do our habitat replacement plan out at your treatment plant. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. I want to give Mike Zeman as much time as possible. Let's see. Cindy, why don't you move ahead a couple? One more. Yeah, this is probably things that I've mentioned about some of which I've mentioned about the Salinity project, but let me just keep going here and I'll come back to some of this maybe if there's questions. So, last view graph. So, and again, this habitat replacement project, it's all about balancing the loss units from drying up the environment by installing pipe with replacement units. And again, treatment plant, Mike Seaman will talk a little bit more about this. He has put together a draft plan, which we can certainly give you a copy of. And just a final comment is that Reclamation has looked at our draft plan and what we're interested in doing here, and they've verbally approved this. And so we're at this point now where we want to start interacting with the town and try to get an agreement going. And I think that's probably all I have to say. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Are all your infrastructures you plan on replacing, the ditch and stuff, you're going to line with pipe, is that all below our springs? Or is it
No, it's
above?
above and below your springs.
It is above and below.
I think that's right, Steve. The pipeline that we're putting in, I think it's going to be both above and below the town springs.
You know, it would be really beneficial for the people who watch this on YouTube if you could come and talk to the microphone, because they cannot hear you when you say anything. So if you could come and repeat that into the mic, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, most all this will be up Minnesota Creek and Lone Cabin. If you're familiar with that, it'll all be east of Peonia. And, you know, we're looking at 25 miles of open ditch, and we're replacing it with about 14 miles of pressurized pipe.
Yeah, my question was only, does all this activity take place below our springs?
It'll be east of your springs and it comes down on lower. So it'd be above your springs, or actually low. It'll come down low below your springs. Yes.
Okay, thanks. That's really all the question I had. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mike?
Yeah.
Michael Zeman, Montrose. This record, can you go up the second? The Habitat project, we're glad to be working with the town of Peonia with. Travis been great. He said he's approached you guys, kind of got a little bit of understanding here, so I'm just going to try to enhance that, your knowledge of it a little bit. We have 112 habitat units that we have to make up, so this is a habitat project we're doing down there at the wastewater treatment site. The parties involved, be Turner Ditch, Steve Kostler and Paul Maudlin, town of Peonia. We're working with Travis and your town council here. Big B Orchard is Jeff Swartz next door to us. He's the intricate part of the program there. Bureau of Reclamation, they oversee our project, and everything is reviewed by them. The funding comes from them, so everything has to pass through them. Jay Carter, Western Slope Conservation Center, is probably going to be integral in helping us develop the site, providing some manpower for maintenance. And Don Reeder from Rare Earth Science is one putting together the NEPA portion of the plan. And then me, the habitat biologist. Okay, have the second slide, please. Part of this is the water treatment plant down here. It's raised by fencing. We're looking at using the whole 42, well, this is a 42-acre section here. This portion where the water treatment ponds are will not be in the project area. I mean,
could you talk closer into the
sorry.
mic? Thank you.
Won't be in the site. We have Big B Orchard has this property here, and off to the side, they have put a new pond in here, and they also have water that comes down from their irrigation from the orchards and comes down here. Have next slide, please. Our project that we plan on doing is putting in a new pipeline down to the town of Peonia. It currently shares pipe with Big B. Their water is taking in down here and over here. The system is kind of getting very rapidly, well, it hasn't rapidly, but it's very dilapidated. And so we want to put a pressurized water system in here. Big B can take their water out here. It doesn't have to be pressurized. And ours would continue on down here to the Habitat project. What we're looking at doing is there's a 16-acre field up here that's currently kept for the water treatment plant. When they take out the dredges every 15, 16 years, it needs to be applied someplace. And so we want to use that field, but we want to keep it available for the town to use that for. So we're looking at doing this, coming in and bringing in the pressurized system and doing habitat plantings along here. These kind of red stripes that represent trees and shrubs that we'd be putting in there. Probably be 17 to 20 feet in between the rows so that Travis comes in there to empty the dredges out. He's got room to do that. That's one portion of the project. We have this little area down here. Was inadvertently, this area is kind of dried up when these ponds were put in. We have a drainage around there to keep the pond liners for floating, and the water comes out and it's put out over here. You can kind of look at this area here. It's kind of barren, kind of looks white. What's happening down below those ponds is a lot of the riparian area is stressed out. Cottonwoods are dying. So we're trying to come back in there and replenish that water to them. What part of the project would be is we can come in here, tap in that line, that drain line, and it had been coming out down here, flowing down these areas. We can take part of it and come over here and bring it down to this lower portion here. This would benefit private property down below too. We're also working with Jeff Schwartz from Big B's Orchard. He has wastewater coming off his orchards and from his pond up here that is currently being dumped into the monitor ditch. It kind of flows around here. It just goes on down. So we're looking at working with him to bring that extra flow by water, bring it down to the water area and down to the other areas down below here. This is a really good riparian area here. It receives a lot of water from the runoff and subbing over from monitor ditch. And so we're trying to integrate all these water sources in there. There's also a ditch or a spring up here that comes out of the field. We'd like to work with the town to increase their water, protect their water rights from it. So it's one that we're looking at wanting to file on. There's tailwaters that come down from the water treatment plant, flows down to the river, Gunnison River. We'd also like to use those and kind of bring them back over. They still go down the Gunnison River, but we want to focus on going through the riparian area down below. We'd have contractors come in there, build a very shallow ditch along there, and that helps regenerate the riparian area there. This is also a lot of Russian olive and tamarisk down there. So part of the habitat project would be coming in here and doing removal of that. We've got some very good crews that come in here. We use rubber tracked skid steers. They come up, finally grind up the Russian olive and the tamarisk, and it kind of presents mulch. We have crews come back in behind them and apply herbicide that helps prevent regrowth. This is a long-term project. We're looking at a 50-year commitment with the town. We help write it, get it over to you guys to get it approved. But ditch company is ultimately responsible for helping take care of it. But the idea is they come in, do the heavy lifting, get the invasive species taken care of, get the water coming down to the areas, and tie up the water rights, and get everything going, and then hand it off to the town. So I've managed Escalante State Wildlife Area for 13 years, so I'm used to making all these projects as user-friendly as I can with less maintenance as possible. So that's what we're looking for, developing this here. There's also another area right down here below next to the Gunnison River that's braided area. It gets scoured. You have spring flooding comes through and it just kind of washes away the dirt down there. It's not that great a habitat, so most of the soil's gone. So what we're looking at doing is coming in and building log dams in the braided area. Just taking some of the old deadfall from up above that we're pulling, the old cottonwoods, and bringing them in and putting in these areas. And so when we have heavy spring runoff come down there, it will come down there and slow down the water, help deposit soils, and hopefully build up the soil conditions where we can get more natural regeneration of riparian plants. I said, Turner Ditch would be responsible for getting the contractors in there, help writing the grants, help with protecting the water rights, and getting everything going there. So, I know that's really quick. It's kind of a lot to put in here, but we do have this presentation available to you too.
Okay. All right. Do we have questions? Yes, Mick.
On your project overview, item number 9 that was provided in the packet, I see there's going to be an 8-foot tall game fence put around the 16
yes.
acres. And it says this fence may be removed in the future after vegetation is well established. I'm wondering, is that up to the town to remove that if we want to, or Turner Ditch Company, or who would do that removal?
It would be a cooperation of Turner Ditch and the town and Bureau of Reclamation. Bureau of Reclamation comes in and they oversee the project. They will come back in and be inspecting the project for at least the first 3 to 5 years. We have habitat parameters that we put in there. There's got to be a certain amount of trees survive. There's got to be a certain amount of species. The invasive weeds have to be kept down to a certain level. So they come up there and inspect it. And if we get this really established, there's a lot of groundwater in that 16 acres above there. So we get things going, it should go like gangbusters. But we'd be keeping cattle out of there, and we'd be keeping wildlife out because they can really raise cane with the loose plantings.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from the board or comments? Yes, Tammy.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Dueling trustees.
Okay. So it's nice to have a visual after reading all this and trying to picture exactly where all this happened. And this is definitely a comment. I'm reminded of Kevin Parks and his wetlands restoration project that turned an old gravel pit into some of the most beautiful wildlife and bird habitat in the valley. And that's, when I was reading this, that's kind of what I thought was, you know, this is going to take something that was once really nice and turn it back into something really nice. And I honestly couldn't see anything that just really stood out that would be negative if the town, in the town's consideration of this. It just,
if you're familiar with
all
the North
seems
Fork River
real
Park
wonderful.
down here, I did the habitat plan for that. So if you kind of like what's there, we're doing similar work here.
good to know. Thank you.
All right, Bill.
Well, the last sentence, near the last sentence of your part here in the package, you say town of Pena will be responsible for maintaining it later down the road. You have any idea what those costs are going to be?
I don't. I mean, we're designing once the vegetation stuff comes in and starts going. It's kind of minimal. The initial first to 3 to 5 years is the most important. Once you get the trees and shrubs up, there's not a whole lot there. Travis or his crews be responsible for keeping the area up in the 16 area plot above the ponds cleared so that they can get vegetated or get the dredges in there. Down below, it's going to be some probably weed management. All towns and counties are supposed to be trying to keep that up, following the county and state weed laws. So, like I said, it's just kind of working with them. The first 3 years, there's going to be tamaris and Russian olive regrowth. They be coming back in and hitting them. Usually come in the fall, cut them down, lop them down, get them treated again. Being persistent reduces that level of weeds and stuff in there. We're also working with Palisade Insectatory, and they've got some really good biological controls for Russian knapweed and for Canada thistle. And I've got another project down at John Wilfelt's out south of Delta, and they actually provide the biologics for all over the state practically. That's done so well there. So we want to get those up there. If we can get those working, that helps reduce the amount of herbicide you play and how many non-native species we have out there on the area.
Are you looking for an answer from us tonight?
No, this is kind of more educational. I didn't know how much stuff Travis had got to you, so it was you're trying to update you real quick on the project, and if you got questions,
well, it looks like a pretty good sized project you guys are envisioning down there, and I, as a council member, would like to kind of walk it down there and kind of get a tour. I don't think any of us have a problem with it, but it's a big project, not just one little area, and to kind of get an idea of what you got going on down there.
I'd be glad to.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
Trustee Budinger.
I think this is going to be beautiful when it's all finished, but I'm just wondering what the pipeline itself above that does to our springs. When you're putting in the pipeline, does it cut off any of our natural, what we use for our water in the town?
Well, I'd be kind of speaking for Paul, but the way it's designed is we're taking water that's up there in the reservoirs already, or the creeks that Turner Ditch and Lone Cabin Ditch Companies already have the water rights for them. So they're piping them through, so it's in a pipeline, so it's not taking for water from the springs. It's taking water that's already allocated to the ditches.
Okay.
And so, if anything, it might be protecting them a little bit more. But
thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? No? I would say this sounds like a wonderful project, and I'm with Trustee Bear. I would like to walk down there and take a look at it. So maybe if
Travis know, we can try to make it happen then.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any comment from the public? Yes, Ms. Smith.
So, Paige Smith, Delta Avenue, and I'm all for habitat improvement, et cetera, but here is an example of planning. The SGM report on page 4-2 talks about the water treatment plant, and it essentially is saying that it's expected that there's going to be new levels for total nitrogen and phosphorus that have to be met, and in all likelihood, it won't be able to be possible with a lagoon system, and the lagoons may have to be abandoned for a mechanical system. And that could have, the levels could be established by 2027. So it's not very far away, and I'm bringing this up because the town may have to abandon those lagoons and put in a whole different mechanical system that you would probably want to think about with what you're considering here. And then the other thing in this report is that in order to get the ammonia levels down, there needs to be more dredging. So again, probably need to put more stuff in that field to the south. I'm just bringing this up because this is my point. This is a huge project you all are talking about, and what you see on the ground right now may not be what needs to be on the ground in as little as 5 or 6 years. So, not to be a wet blanket, but I think it's really important that this water treatment system get a lot of attention, and what SGM is proposing, I think is huge, and it could impact what they all want to do. And I think it would be wonderful if all the trustees took a walk all around that sewer plant. I think you'd find some really interesting things there. Thank you.
Anything else from the public? All right, seeing none. So I'm assuming we're doing nothing tonight? We are doing nothing tonight, correct? All right. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming and presenting to us, and I would really look forward to some kind of organized tour down there. That would be wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. All right, next item on the agenda is the town treasurer position description.
So, sorry I missed a lot of the presentation. We have spoken. I know Travis has briefly mentioned that he was working with Turner Ditch on a habitat project, but I know no actual data had been brought forward because we just received the actual data. As far as the planning, I would remind the board earlier today during the budget work session under sewer, nitrification, and the desludging were the two items that the town is starting to strategically plan for the future. So we are taking those into consideration when we've been meeting and working with Turner Ditch. The town information that I received was that the direction of the board was to provide the links or the information to the description of a treasurer in statute and in the Paonia Municipal Code. Those links and some actual written data were included in the packet, along with a brief history of the position of treasurer and finance officer for the town of Paonia historically. I've received more information since I typed this a summary, and so to bring that up to date, I have actually found that most communities, the treasurer is not the finance officer. They have that split, and for most communities, it's actually the clerk is the treasurer, so that the finance officer is not creating and overseeing smaller communities. Larger communities have appointed treasurers, such as the approach that the town had with Treasurer King, who was, from my knowledge and information that I've looked at, the only time I could find on record that the town has appointed a treasurer outside of staff.
Well, all I can say is that after going through these documents, I'm thinking, who would do this for $100 a month? And it seems like so much of what it is actually what the finance director is already doing.
That is part of the issue that I saw when we were reviewing this as well at the staff level, is that, of course, through statutory government, you have the right to be more restrictive, and I would think that we have a pretty lax definition in the municipal code on what the treasurer does. But yes, it is right now the finance officer who primarily does all the duties as they're outlined in statute.
C. Budinger?
It seemed to me that our treasurer, Mr. King, was another safety oversight, and it removes the check signing from the finance. And that, to me, is the most powerful thing. Because I don't think the one who's writing the checks should be signing them. And so that, to me, was a good thing for the town. And it also gave another pair of eyes for larger projects. I mean, like when we get into big sewer plants and stuff, or refinancing big loans, or franchises that are out of the day-to-day kind of thing. It's another pair of eyes. It's more experience brought to the thing, but it was mostly oversight.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'm sorry I didn't give an explanation of the job description, but in researching, this was a job description that I located that it looks as though that's the description the town was using previously.
Trustee Bear.
Yes, I think that Trustee Budinger described Mr. King's role pretty well. I believe that I, for one, would like to have that extra set of eyes, and if I was the finance officer, I would too, because it just helps to insulate against future innuendos and stuff that come out of the handling of money.
Yes.
So, and I would say that we don't disagree. We weren't recommending that one way or the other. We were just providing the information and how it was done prior. And really, from the staff level, what we would be looking for, what I would be looking for, is a clear direction from the board and potential revision to ordinance, and a clear definition of what that treasurer duties was going to be, so that there weren't questions moving forward about whether or not we had a treasurer in a position who wasn't fulfilling their responsibilities based on what the statute says versus what a town ordinance says.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. We can become more strict than the state ordinance, but we can't become less restrictive than the state ordinance, which means, right, which means that we would have to follow the state ordinance then. So it seems like our job description that you included in the packet pretty much covers all those duties.
Right, but that job description was based on when the treasurer was the finance officer. And so if you're going to have a treasurer who's going to do all of those duties, you're talking about that would be another full-time staff member that basically would be doing the finance director's job. So that would be a significant change in structure from what we have currently or what we had when Treasurer King was acting as the treasurer.
Do you have any direction for us on this, Bo?
Not anything great, to be honest with you. The town administrator is not wrong in that many communities that it's a dual role with the clerk and the finance director. That being, excuse me, clerk and the treasurer. That being said, I mean, I think that a couple of things here. One, you might be of mind of, hey, we've kind of got this job description, we've got the statutory kind of components. Do we throw something out there with respect to an ad and see what the responses is and kind of go from there? Or do we try to reformat this with respect to those roles and responsibilities? And I think that that's probably a much bigger conversation, to be honest with you, in terms of taking a look at what you feel like you want from your finance director, what you want from your treasurer, what you're going to look at with the budgetary considerations, if that's a dual role or if that's something that's independent, or what the consideration would be if you wanted the clerk to have that responsibility.
So yeah, this seems like it's a much bigger discussion. And what are the consequences then, Bo, if we carry this forward and look at this more deeply for the town not having an acting treasurer?
I think short term you would be okay, but you know, you should start this process, and I would advise that you include it in the 2022 budget so that you can move forward with this into next year as soon as possible, frankly.
Yes, Trustee Butler.
I really like the way it was with Mr. King. I really like that the treasurer in this was not an active day-to-day person. This was an oversight position, just very similar to a board member or to a mayor or something at that level. And he could sign checks. And that's about all he did, except if there was a big, because Cindy does everything that's listed in this job description. That's Cindy's job that we're talking about. And if other towns call that the treasurer as well, fine, but I still want to take away the signing position from the finance director and have a treasurer to sign.
Yes, correct.
So I would so looking back at how this came, so previously the board appointed finance director and all those positions, and that encompassed the treasurer position. And so I think what it comes down then to would be semantics. So the board has removed that signatory authority also with the creation and continuance of a finance committee. And so do you designate your finance director and appoint as your treasurer finance, or whomever in that capacity, because she fulfills that job, and create a different title for the position you're talking about that adds that additional person that has experience and oversight, and I'm spitballing, so tell me if I'm wrong, but call that something else. So that, because I would assume this is why most small communities, and I have a list, it was a lot of communities responded on the listserv, I would assume that that's why it's a staff member, is because they have that person that's doing those tasks and that's their finance. And that's the reason why they're encompassing that appointment with someone that's already on staff and not another person that's a paid position.
Other comments from the board? Well, personally, I kind of like the idea of having the finance director be the treasurer and have it as a co-position, and then appoint another position. We can name it what we want. We can create it as we want it to do more oversight and to sign checks. I don't know what we would call that position. You know, I don't know where in the hierarchy of anything in the code we could create such an animal. But it does seem ludicrous to have a finance director and then to basically have to hire a treasurer to do exactly what the finance director is doing.
Maybe
Who would the treasurer / finance director answer to? The board or to the administrator?
That's a good question. In the past, do you have any idea how the lines of authority went?
We didn't have a town administrator. I don't know how it went previous when John Norris was here, but after John Norris and a very quick blip where they tried a replacement, there wasn't a town administrator. Oversight was the clerk, the department heads, and the mayor worked on the daily, and every department head was appointed and answered to the board. Every department head was. And so again, I don't know. I think that that's a valid question and conversation, and I think that would be I would assume it would be the same, that the finance director would answer to the town administrator.
Well, all of that ultimately led up to a case where Peonia was defrauded out of a lot of money. I, for one, if I was in the position of the finance director, I would not be the one wanting to sign checks. And I think it's a bad thing to do. Either the finance director becomes the treasurer and she answers to the board, or she remains in her position and we hire another person for that job. I think we need to have somebody that is a treasurer, answerable to the board, that oversees the operations, and if it's nothing else, rubber stamp everything, but he has a responsibility to answer to the board.
And I don't think that staff was thinking any different. Nobody was asking for Cindy to have signature, or our finance, excuse me, I want to take individuals out of it. Our finance director, if the board chose to resume that process, to resume signatory authority. That was why the potential suggestion was made about designating that the treasurer designation is to the finance director, so that we're covered statutorily, but the board still filling a position for financial oversight, and bringing that information to the board when needed and having signing authority. Currently, 5 people have signing authority, and that would be the 2 finance members, the mayor, and of course yourself as a backup, and myself. And I don't think anyone was thinking about changing that in any other way when it came to the finance director's position.
Trustee Budinger?
I don't really care. I mean, you know, I want somebody to be able to sign checks, and I'd like somebody to be able to keep an eye out and report to the board about overall planning, finance matters, and not get into the, well, you know, as far as oversight is concerned, get into the weeds as far as that's necessary, but be a help to the finance department rather than a work alongside person. Do you understand what I mean?
Well, here's another idea. What if we designate a member of the board to act in that oversight role we let the finance director be the treasurer, or designate the clerk as the treasurer, one of the two, but have a staff member be designated treasurer to fulfill the statutory obligations, and then assign a member of the board to do the oversight piece of it.
We used to have a finance committee.
Yeah, we did. We basically disbanded all the committees except on an ad hoc basis.
So Mayor, be happy to also research if you wanted to look at creating this kind of new role. I don't know what we would call that yet, but it's got this financial oversight component to it. Some of the functions that Mr. King served, but it wouldn't have the statutory requirement of treasurer, and we could try to bring that back to the board if that was something that the board is interested in.
Okay, we have a yes. So I tell you what, I'm going to let Bill make a motion if he wants to, and then
I would move that we ask the Mr. Nerlin to come back to us with suggestions. I don't know what exactly they will be.
Okay.
Is that good enough?
Okay.
Something that focuses on financial oversight and
Something
independence.
that focuses on financial oversight.
Okay. Could I get a second?
I second it.
All right. Cindy, you had your, okay, she didn't want to say anything. Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
So this is really confusing. Before 2016, we didn't actually have a treasurer. If you look at the old budgets and the organizational chart, there was no treasurer listed. And I think Jane Berry caught the fact that we were out of compliance with state statute. And that's when Ross King was appointed as treasurer. But when these board appointments, I guess my question is, what's the purpose of state statute requiring board appointments? When some of our board appointments were disbanded, I think Charles Stewart didn't want to see any more appointments than is absolutely required by state statute, because that would mean that the board could actually fire that person. So if you have a treasurer doing the job, Cindy's job basically, does that, and Cindy, the finance officer, takes that appointment, could she technically be fired? I mean, there are, I don't know if you went to the link that was provided in the packet for Title 31, but I went to it and it wasn't available to me. You had to have a LexisNexis membership. So how many people actually read state statute, treasurer? You were able to get to it? Okay, so there are job duties that are replicated there, but my question is really confusing. It's like, so who fires someone who has a dual role like that? And if you're just doing it for convenience sake, I mean, that was the mess with the whole clerk position with Barb Peterson. The board had to actually convene a meeting and bring up the reasons why she couldn't serve that position. It wasn't up to the administrator to fire her. So that could be confusing.
But that's laid out in statute, that
Yeah.
you have to do it that way with the town clerk. The board.
It's a required appointment, right?
Right. Right.
And perhaps you want to maybe pay a treasurer a little bit more money. Required appointments, we have required appointments for the attorney, and that's not something we pay $100 a month on. I mean, if there's a substantial amount of work or qualifications this person should have, maybe that should be recognized. And this is a really good time to talk about it because you are considering the budget right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bruner.
So I hope I didn't hear you right, that somebody was considering adding more duties to the clerk administrator. I couldn't have heard that right. You wouldn't do that, would you?
It's basically doing what they're doing and just giving them the title.
Right. And so what that makes me think is that it's an attempt to subvert the law. You've got a state law here that says you have to have this treasurer and they have to be appointed. And I think the reason they're appointed is to give them independence from political pressure. Because you have to go through a specific public hearing and a constitutionally valid reason to terminate them. So when I hear talking about having a treasurer, but they're not really the treasurer, somebody else is going to be the treasurer, I can't follow that. I don't get that. The only other thing I want to say is that I'm sure you all read very carefully all these statutes about the treasurer, and you saw this part here, where it says that all the books and papers pertaining to the office of the treasurer, which is all the financial records of the town, shall be open to the inspection and subject to the examination of the mayor, any member of the governing body, or any committee thereof. So this is new information to me. I wish I'd have known about it years ago, but I think this says that exactly what it says. Any member of the governing body has got carte blanche to examine all the financial records of the town. And I think that's great. Thank you.
Anything else from the public? All right, seeing none. We have a motion and a second to have Attorney Nerlin look into this. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, let's move on to ordinance 2021-08 around ordinance regarding dog shelter impound. All right. So, go ahead.
So the Governmental Affairs and Public Safety Committee was working pretty closely on this and may be able to provide additional information. But what it comes down to is, in a nutshell, is with the closure of Dr. Vincent's office a few years ago, the town lost a location for kenneling and sheltering. The police department has tried to work with a few different entities to see about getting another one in place, and is continuing that conversation now with a location in Delta. But in the meantime, again, we have an ordinance that said we shall provide a shelter, and the town does not have the ability to do that, and has been an ongoing issue that we don't see resolution for in the immediate future. So the ordinance in front of you is a simple change from a shall to a may, so that we have that capability when we have one available, and when we don't, we have provisions in the ordinance on how that would be addressed.
Comments, questions from the board? Yes, Nick.
And I think there was supposed to be some money from Back the Badge to be applied for a local dog shelter, but I think that ended up probably going to Delta then. So, and that's one of the reasons we decided we have to change the ordinance from basically shall to may.
Other comments from the board? Questions? I do have one on, let's see, page 115 in the packet. So it's section 7-7-50, number 3, section 7-7-240A. In the middle of that paragraph, it says stray animals whose owners cannot be located shall be confined in the town area animal shelter. I think that should be may.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and I think that's the only shall I found in there. All right. So, can we get a motion to accept ordinance 2021-08?
I move that we accept this ordinance with the one change as stated.
Do I have a second?
Second it.
Further discussion? Anything from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
I have a question. I heard Trustee Johnson saying there could have been Back the Badge money for this, but is there anything about the badge that precludes us from using some of the money we get for more animal services? it's something that the police department actually is responsible for.
You know, and that's the thing, is that we looked into this extensively. We were going to take money, and we were going to pay kennels to do this for us, and we couldn't find any takers. Nobody would take us up on it, which has been the issue. I mean, they went as far as Cedar Edge to see if they could find something, and they couldn't find anyone.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next on the agenda is the Brownfield Assessment Award. This is just to inform the board, I don't remember how long ago, we applied for a Brownfields assessment grant. And what this is going to do is they're going to go out and test the Twin Lakes property to make sure that it has been remediated correctly, so that we can, you know, if we choose at some point to build houses on that or sell it off or whatever, we have a clean bill of health. And this will cost the town no money at all, and no in kind at all. So, it's a win. Any questions from the board? Yes, Tammy.
I just wondered if you could remind us, we have money set aside for any cleanup if that is necessary. Is that correct? Like some $30,000, something comes to mind?
We have funds in sewer that are still, that are held in the sewer fund from sale of property.
That could be used to clean this up should they find something.
Right.
There's another Brownfields grant we can apply for that will help
Yes.
with remediation.
Oh, and I'm sorry, what you're speaking about is the funds that we've held specific for that property as well, to deal with fencing for the Delivers property and anything else that needed to happen there. And yes, we could use that as well as the reserve that we have that was earmarked and designated by the mayor and the board, that it would stay reserved for sewer projects with the sale of the property. So the board is aware, I have reached out and are continuing conversations with USDA on that, and their initial review and evaluation is that we would not have to retain that. That would be board direction, and once we make sure that that is accurate, we'll give an update on that as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments from the board? All right, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the CDOT grant submittal. This was the grant that we submitted, April, May, something like that. And we're turned down on, and Corinne and I talked extensively with Molly Bly, who was our CDOT representative at the time, and she said it was a very well-written grant, and the only reason we didn't get it is because nobody had been killed at that intersection. It's part of their criteria. So we were highly encouraged. I was going to say, let's kill a kid for money? I don't know. But anyhow, so she said that we really, really should reapply for this grant, and that the CDOT was actually looking at changing their criteria on that count to try for prevention instead of after-the-fact murder. So there is a link to that grant. It will be submitted the way it is, with the exception we have collected more traffic data, so the traffic data will be updated in it. Yes, Bill?
Well, seeing how a lot of that is county land, have we had any discussions with the county about that crossing?
Absolutely. What we had, prior to this, we had discussions with the county, and their plan was they would go ahead and pave if we did curb and gutter. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the curb and gutter done this year because our contractor is completely booked up. So we decided that since we can't go forward with it anyway, we might as well reapply for the grant. Let's go ahead and get the money, and so that we can defray some of our expenses and get this paid for. There is an agreement with the county in this grant about what they will give us in kind for this grant, as well as an agreement that they will cede that property to us when the intersection is completed. And the school, we have an agreement with the school as well, that they will also cede their little piece of property to the town. as well. Okay, any other questions? All right, as soon as that grant portal opens again, we're gonna do it again. All right, next, Town of Paonia recognized holidays for 2022.
It's not listed and it's not a holiday, but I think it's practice that we are closed also the day after Thanksgiving. Is that correct?
We do close the day after Thanksgiving as well, yes.
Yeah.
We
So-
have to use our time, though. That's a flex holiday. That's not a paid holiday by the town.
Oh,
And
okay.
don't you bring that to the board?
We typically do an update on any days that we're asking for, in addition.
To close,
when we get closer to the
Yeah.
holiday season, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so what's listed here, I've had several people, other jurisdictions, some community members and board members ask about some of the more recent holidays that are recognized by the state and government. So I was told to bring it to the board, and that's what is in front of you.
Okay, anybody want to say anything about the holidays? Do we want to add one? Do we want to switch one out? Do we want to throw the whole thing away and start all over? Bill?
Well, I would move that we keep the current holidays as listed.
Okay, do I have a second? It looks like it's dying for lack of a second. Okay.
I would second it, but Columbus Day is a federal holiday. They're just changing the nature of the holiday. And I would like to see Columbus Day stay in there.
So you would like to add it? Because we don't currently recognize Columbus Day.
So the office was open yesterday?
Yep.
Okay.
At the board, several years ago, the board also did not recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and at that time, the board said one or the other, and they chose Martin Luther King Jr. Day and did not include Columbus Day. And some communities, such as City of Delta and Delta County offices, actually switched Columbus Day for Francis Xavier Cabrini Day. So they were open yesterday as well. They are now observing the state holiday instead of the federal.
Then I will just second the motion.
Okay, further discussion from the board? Seeing none, further discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to keep the holidays we have. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, last on the agenda is the mayor's report. The mayor attended a meeting today, however, she did not have time to write it up, so it will be included in my next report. So the mayor has nothing to report. All right. In that case, we have reached the end of our agenda. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. This meeting is adjourned.